Chapter 5:15. The situation that Qin Yu worried about the most didn't occur. The Calamity Immortal Realm's Supreme Elders still had their own statuses. Even if they attached great importance to the unexpected change in the Demon Ascension Gate, they still didn't personally appear to inquire. This was naturally good news for Qin Yu. Even if he was prepared, facing a Calamity Immortal Realm's Supreme Elder would inevitably cause him to be extremely nervous. There was no telling if there would be a mistake. The true demon guards stood guard outside the door. Across from them were the two demonic path masters who were responsible for questioning Qin Yu today. Their auras were tyrannical, they were both peak blue sea characters. However, the cultivator on the left had a gentle expression. As he saw Qin Yu enter, he nodded in acknowledgement. As for the one on the right, his attitude wasn't friendly at all. His icy cold eyes were like blades, filled with a chilling intent. Name? Li Yunqi shouted out loud. Qin Yu frowned. He glanced at him and said, Yao Bin. Black Demon Sect Yao Bin. That's me. Li Yunqi sneered. Identity confirmed. Yao Bin, today I will question you on behalf of the demonic path. You must tell us everything you experienced after entering the Demon Ascension Gate's small world. I advise you to tell us the truth. If you are discovered to be hiding something, you won't like the consequences. Sun Shui nodded. Fellow Daoist Yao Bin, this matter is of great importance. The Calamity Immortals are paying close attention to it, so you must think carefully before you speak. Don't forget anything. Li Yunqi frowned, a bit dissatisfied with Qin Yu's attitude. But the two of them had similar statuses, so he could only snort. Sun Shui faintly smiled, not caring. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. After several breaths of silence, he slowly said, On the day the Demon Ascension Gate opened, I entered the small world with fellow Taoists and met fellow Taoists Sun Zifu and the others, and sure enough, as he spoke to hear, Qin Yu saw a bright light flash in Sun Shui's eyes. He seemed to have made some judgments in his mind and his tone became even calmer. He recounted his experiences in the small world as they were. Of course, most of what Qin Yu said could be substantiated. There were some key points that he used the spring and autumn annals style to gloss over in a few sentences. Li Yunqi interrupted Qin Yu several times, asking him to elaborate. But, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't find anything wrong. There were some things that they didn't know about Qin Yu's story and some things that they had verified from other aspects. Now that they compared them, Qin Yu's story was much more believable. 9 truths and 1 falsehood was naturally the hardest to unravel. When Xian Zhao saw that he wasn't a match for the Monster Emperor, he used a secret technique to escape. As for me, I didn't have the slightest confidence in facing the resurrected Monster Emperor, so I also ran away. Qin Yu picked up the teacup in front of him and took a sip, indicating that he had finished speaking. Li Yunqi was flustered and exasperated. Tell me in detail. After Zhao Qianyuan left, what did you do? At this critical moment, how could he allow himself to be so perfunctory? Qin Yu set down the teacup. What does fellow Daoist Zhao want to know? I've already said it very clearly. After Xian Zhao escaped, I didn't dare to stay for long. I followed closely behind and escaped from the small world. Could it be that fellow Daoist Zhao believes that in that sort of situation, I wouldn't be in a hurry to escape and would have the mind to do something else? Li Yunqi's face was livid. That was not what he wanted to know. Yao Bin seemed to be obedient, but in fact, he was so slippery that he didn't get any useful information at all. It was almost certain that Yao Bin was the last person to leave, but who knew what had happened? Zhao Qianyuan had already escaped, so how could Yao Bin possibly contend with him? Taking a deep breath, Li Yunqi coldly said, Yao Bin, how did you leave the small world? Qin Yu looked at him, his eyes filled with pity, as if he were looking at an idiot. Li Yunqi slammed the table. Yao Bin. I'm warning you, you had best be honest and answer my questions. This bastard, just what kind of eyes did he have? He really deserved to be burned to death. Qin Yu's voice turned cold. Fellow Daoish Li, the method I used to escape from the small world is my greatest secret. Li Yunqi sneered. I ask questions on behalf of the demonic path. You must answer all my questions. Qin Yu was silent for several breaths of time. He nodded and sighed. It looks like I have to say it. There are some parts of what I said before that I wasn't too clear on, so I will have to say it again. Li Yunqi's eyes brightened. Hurry up and speak. Brat, are you scared? If you want to be honest now, it's too late. No matter how cooperative you are, how did you leave the small world? Don't even think about skipping over this question. Qin Yu nodded. As I said before, another group of cultivators suddenly fell into the demonic path and the monster tree puppets crazily attacked them. In addition, the matter of the monster race Great Emperor resurrecting was too terrifying, so many people decided to flee. The first person to successfully escape was Dong Hanju. So the rumors were true. Fellow Daoist Dong was born with a bead in his mouth, and this bead can actually summon 7 colors. The reason Dong Hanju was able to escape was because of the power of this bead. Now, I will explain the process in detail. Li Yunqi's face turned green. He shouted, "Shut up." Cold sweat dripped down his forehead. Dong Hanju was the future star of the Dong family and had an extremely high status in the Dong family. The bead he was born with was his greatest secret. If the information about this bead were to be exposed today because of his inquiry, Li Yunqi clenched his teeth. Let's skip this part and continue. Qin Yu nodded. Next is Su Guzi, Zhou Fenghuang, and Mu Qingwan. I must say that fellow Daoist Su's attainments in array formations are truly unfathomable. He was actually able to lay down a secret array to tear apart space. Unfortunately, the final result was that Su Guzi died and Zhou Fenghuang and Mu Qingwan borrowed the power of the array to escape. As for the specifics, let me slowly explain it to you. Li Yunqi stood up. His movements were too fast and too fierce. He bumped into the table and nearly overturned it. The teacups fell to the ground with loud crackling sounds. Qin Yu had an innocent expression. Fellow Daoist Li, what is it? Li Yunqi took a deep breath and then another. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold himself back and would jump over and strangle this bastard to death. Even this part can escape. This bastard was absolutely doing this on purpose. Dong Hanju's matter was already tricky enough, but he actually dared to mention Su Guzi's death. Now that the entire Su family had gone crazy, if he asked something he shouldn't ask, then the Zhou family and Mu family wouldn't be easy to provoke. They would absolutely make him suffer the consequences. Qin Yu readily accepted his advice. Good, then continue. When Sion Zhao's dragon spear struck out with a heaven-shaking strike, he truly became the incarnation of a divine dragon and massive dragon scales appeared on his spear. He was crying. Motherfucker, you can't play with me like this. I don't want to know anything at all. If the Zhao family knew that Zhao Qinyuan's secrets had been exposed, wouldn't he be torn to pieces? Thinking about it, he feared that even 80 pieces wouldn't be enough. Li Yunqi shuddered and a cold chill ran down his spine. Sun Shuyi's lips curved up in a smile and he finally relaxed. It was clear that this Yao Bin was a smart person. That surname Li had a member of his family die, so he didn't like anyone he saw. And now, it was unknown who he was listening to, but if he wanted to obtain something from him, it seemed that there was no hope. Li Yuni flew into a rage. Yao Bin, if you want to die then don't drag us down with you. This matter involves the secrets of everyone's cultivation, so how could it be made public? Qin Yu's complexion was cold. It seems that fellow Daoist Li hasn't drunk too much. Since you know this, why are you still forcing me? Li Yuni jumped into the pit. His face turned the color of pig liver, but he couldn't say a single word. This was the same as Qin Yu using his own words to ruthlessly slap him in the face. Sun Shui stepped forward to smooth things over. If this surname Li were to shed all pretense of cordiality, then no one would have any face left. If the lords of the mansion were to learn of this, he would have the impression of being incompetent. Fellow Daoist Yao, please calm down. Fellow Daoist Li was worried about the small world, so his words were a bit rash. Please don't take it to heart. As cultivators, which one of us doesn't have some secrets? We naturally don't want others to know about this. This is understandable. He paused and continued to say, today's questioning has been very clear. How about we end things here first? What does fellow Daoist Li think? Li Yuni's complexion darkened. I have no objections. Surname Yao bastard, I will remember you. We aren't finished yet. Qin Yu stood up and cupped his hands together. If that's the case, then I will bid my farewells first. He turned and left. Li Yuni flicked his sleeves and left. Just as he was about to leave the city lord mansion, Sun Shui caught up to him. Fellow Daoist Yao, please wait a moment. Qin Yu turned around. Fellow Daoist Sun, is there something you need? Sun Shui was full of smiles. His voice was warm and friendly. I'll be rude and call fellow Daoist Yao little brother. You saved my family's young master, and as your uncle, I am deeply grateful. He was truly grateful. After the small world opened, Sun Zifu, who had buried himself underground, was rescued. After crying and howling for some time, the Sun family soon discovered just how he had survived. Some people hated Qin Yu for meddling in other people's business, but there were also people who were extremely grateful to him. Sun Shui was one of these people. Because he had no children, he regarded this nephew of his, Sun Zifu, as his own son. He always had high hopes for him. Qin Yu was enlightened. So fellow Daoist Sun and Sun Zifu are actually uncle and nephew. Sun Shui smiled. What, you don't want to call me big brother? Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Big brother Sun is too serious. It's just that I and Sun Zifu are of the same generation, so I fear it might be a bit inappropriate. Sun Shui waved his hand. Even if this little brat cultivates for several hundred more years, he still might not have the qualifications to call me little brother. From now on, just call me nephew. With these words, young Master Sun had lowered his seniority. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. Sun Shui lowered his voice. The changes in the small world are too great and the demonic path is placing great importance on it. But this matter might also have other consequences. Brother Yao, for the next few days, it would be best if you stayed in Heavenly Demon City and didn't casually leave. He straightened himself. I still have to report to the lords, so I won't send you off. You and I will have plenty of opportunities to get closer in the future. He cupped his hands together and bid his farewells. That surname Li was short-sighted, but he wasn't an idiot. If this Yao Bin could obtain such a high evaluation from Zhao Qianyuan, then he definitely wasn't an ordinary person. His future achievements would be limitless. Since the Sun family had a chance to form a relationship with him, he naturally had to manage it well. Perhaps there would be unexpected harvests in the future. The Sun family was rich enough to rival an entire nation and their strength couldn't be underestimated. But, in terms of peak strength, they were just barely passable. Otherwise, why would he cast his net so wide in hopes of harvesting something? Shaking his head, Sun Shui quickened his pace. He gathered his thoughts and began to prepare to report to the lords. Although Li Yunqi didn't like Qin Yu and wished that he couldn't leave the house, facing a calamity immortal realm's super powerhouse, he didn't dare to speak half a word of lies. At most, he would describe Qin Yu's wild and unruly nature. After that, Sun Shi said it again. Basically, he was cleared of suspicion. After receiving the signal, the two bowed, drew back several steps, and left. In the main hall, because space couldn't withstand the fluctuations of strength, it began to distort. This wasn't intentional, but was a natural result of the aura dissipating. A blurry figure slowly said, "With what we have now, there is no way we can find any useful clues from these juniors." Another figure said, "Ever since the Demon Ascension Gate was established, my demonic path has never suffered such a great loss. Of the 11,300 disciples, less than 20% survived. The demonic path's 100 years of cultivation will be destroyed in a single day. We must clearly investigate this matter. Why did the slumbering monster race Great Emperor suddenly wake up?" On the upper left, the white-robed demon attendant suddenly said, "This time, the demonic path's junior elites have suffered serious casualties, but that doesn't mean we haven't gained anything. Today, this Yao Bin is equal to 10,000 people. Even so, the greatest problem is that the ancient tree monster has withered and the small world will soon collapse. This is the demonic path's greatest loss." The atmosphere suddenly froze. If it were only the young disciples that had suffered heavy casualties, then although they were angry, they wouldn't be so solemn. After all, the Demon Ascension Gate was opened once every 100 years and the demonic path had a deep background. Even if this generation of disciples were destroyed, they could naturally replenish themselves after another 100 years. There wouldn't be too much of an impact. But the price of a small world being destroyed was far too heavy, so heavy that even with their status they found it hard to bear. This was because a small world represented an endless source of demonic power. It could raise a massive number of demonic path powerhouses. Once it was destroyed, it would be far more difficult for the outstanding demonic path disciples to awaken their bloodlines. The demon attendant lightly said, "Countless years ago, my demonic path's ancestors didn't have a small world, but they were still able to create an unrivaled pressure and establish the transcendent orthodoxy of the demonic path. Now that it has been destroyed, although this is a great loss, from another perspective it might not be a bad thing. In the end, when a cultivator cultivates, they can only rely on themselves. If they are strong enough, why would they need to rely on external objects?" A woman spoke up, her voice young and tender. "Lord Demon Attendant is right. Who cares if the small world is destroyed? Do you think that the prestige of my demonic path today will be affected by this?" She paused for a moment and then continued to say, "There is another problem right now. How will we announce this matter? Right now, the entire land of divinity and demons has gathered at Heavenly Demon City. An accident had occurred at the Demon Ascension Gate's grand ceremony and the demonic path's young disciples had suffered heavy casualties. This news had already spread out through various channels, but most people didn't know the specifics. Nearly 10,000 disciples had died. Of course there were heavy casualties, but 2,000 or 3,000 could also be described as such. As long as the demonic path had the heart to suppress this, it wouldn't be difficult to hide the true losses. The reason they did this was because of Face. The solemn and transcendent demonic path, one of the two great influences of the land of divinity and demons, had suffered such a great loss without even knowing what had happened. If this matter were to spread out, it was inevitable that they would lose Face. The fewer people that died, the less Face they would lose. Several great figures present had also thought of this matter, but no one was willing to speak up. Yan Lu had a close relationship with the demon attendant, so it was best for her to speak up now. The grand hall fell silent. The demon attendant lightly said, "My demonic path has always pursued a perfect heart. If we suffer a loss, we suffer a loss. If we forcefully suppress it, do you think we can pretend it didn't happen? We are just deceiving ourselves and others. His eyes were cold and his majesty seemed to come from above the highest heavens. The accident that occurred in the small world will be reported to the world. My demonic path will not let this matter go. No matter who it is, where it comes from, what sort of background it is, once this matter is discovered, all of their plans will be executed. We will use the blood of millions to comfort the dead juniors of the demonic path. Slaughter intent rose, incomparably domineering. Yen Lu's eyes instantly blurred. As for being scolded to her face, she didn't care at all. He was truly worthy of being called the Lord Demon Attendant. He hadn't changed at all from the past and still made one unable to close their legs. Qin Yu left the City Lord Mansion and boarded the True Demon Guard speedcar. This time, there was no one following him. Qin Yu relaxed just like when he came, leaning back in the soft seat and closing his eyes. But only he knew what sort of pressure he had withstood when he was questioned. 8 terrifying auras flickered in and out of existence, lingering around him the entire time. Although they didn't personally appear, the great figures still paid him the necessary attention. If it weren't for Qin Yu's preparations and his strong will, he would have already been dripping with sweat. How could he have been able to play around with Li Yunqi? Luckily, his performance should have been good, otherwise it would have been impossible for Sun Shui to chase after him. He should have passed this hurdle. As he thought about how Sun Shui had told him not to leave Heavenly Demon City in the near future, Qin Yu faintly smiled. The small world had been sealed off and the Soul Guard Stone had lost its function. The ranking method of past years was no longer applicable. It seemed that there would be some changes to the Demonic Path's disciple recruitment this time. Qin Yu believed that his name would inevitably be among them. After returning to Dawn Perch residence, the True Demon Guards bowed and bid their farewells. Their tone was much more respectful than before. Qin Yu bowed in return and turned to enter the inn. After taking just a few steps, someone greeted him. The shopkeeper's face was as bright as a chrysanthemum. He bowed and apologized, saying that he had eyes but failed to see and had neglected the Lord. He then pulled over Duan San and praised him, saying that from now on he would be the one to specifically serve Lord Yaobin. Qin Yu couldn't help but laugh. He didn't want to be entangled with them any longer. He lightly said, "I'm a bit tired. Don't disturb me." As he spoke, he walked towards the rear courtyard. Duan San eagerly followed, his face flushed red with excitement. The servants of Dawn Perch residence all had eyes as wide as rabbits. To be able to serve such a powerhouse was something to be proud of. This was seniority. After experiencing such an incident, as long as Duan San didn't make any mistakes, he would definitely be placed in an important position. And most importantly, if he served Lord Yaobin well and managed to form a relationship with him, the benefits would simply be unimaginable. The shopkeeper sneered and turned to leave, completely ignoring the pleading eyes of these people. Who told them to not have Duan San's eyesight and try to curry favor with him from the start? The servant responsible for guiding the guests in the rear courtyard was now filled with regret. As he thought of Duan San's depressed face when he left, he couldn't help but curse inwardly. This fellow, he really knew how to act. Did he have to spend a great deal of effort to prevent himself from laughing out loud? That bastard! That bastard Duan personally opened the door. Of course, it was no longer Qin Yu's single room, but the best courtyard of Dawn Perch residence. After the shopkeeper explained the situation, the people who lived here moved out without a word. Qin Yu wasn't surprised. He nodded and walked in, flicking his sleeves and closing the courtyard door. Duan San was so happy that he nearly snot came out of his nose. Lord Yaobin nodded to me, cough cough, I can't be arrogant. I have to continue to work hard and obtain more of the Lord's approval. Perhaps this might be the chance for him, Duan San, to change his destiny. As for that snobbish daughter of old second son's family next door, she was dressed in crude clothes, had a large face, a thick waist, and a small chest, and yet she still thought that she was the most arrogant person in the world. She should just go and do whatever she wanted. Chapter 5:16. In the lands of the extreme north, snow fell all year round and it was bitterly cold. It was still that roughly hewn cave. But today, there were even more people here. Whether it was men or women, they wrapped themselves up like a thick rice dumpling to resist the increasingly strong black ice energy. They knelt on the bone-chilling rocks, their eyes solemn and respectful. "Lord Sage, I ask you to reconsider." The man who spoke was tall and large. His palms were pressed against the ground and his joints bulged out. His aura was fierce and firm. The white-robed sage didn't seem to feel the chill of the outside world. He slowly shook his head, a faint smile on his lips. "I've worked hard to set it up for so many years. Now that it has been successfully opened, there is no reason to give up halfway. To be able to use this ruined body of mine to exchange for a new life for my race, I am very happy." The tall man wanted to say something else but was stopped by the sage. The sage slowly swept his eyes around. "Look, you are all the most outstanding people of my race, but even you have no choice but to wear thick furs to resist the cold. What about your people, your livestock? We are a group of people abandoned by the world. If we don't want to be exterminated, we can only seek our own path to survival. Go. Return to the side of your people who need you. Help them survive and wait for the chance to change the fate of my race. That day won't be too far away." Everyone touched their foreheads to the ground. "We will follow your will. We wish you good health." They turned and left one after another. Many people began to shed tears, because by the time the Lord Sage's message arrived, he should have already left. This was a kindness to their race. All monster tribes would forever engrave it in their hearts. The sage softly said, "Bi-Chi, stay here." The tall man respectfully bowed and stood to the side with his head lowered. After everyone left, there were only 2 people left in the cave. It was completely empty. The sage had a blank look in his eyes. It was unknown what he was thinking, but he didn't speak for a time. Bi-Chi hesitated for a moment. He respectfully said, "Lord Sage, are you worried about the future of our race?" The sage regained his composure. He smiled apologetically and shook his head. "No, I have already made my preparations. And you are outstanding enough. I believe that you can become an outstanding king and lead the monster race to rise. Today, I want to tell you something else. In the demonic path, there is an extremely outstanding youth. His existence is likely to become a great hidden danger for the monster race. So, after my race returns to our ancestral land, you must find him and kill him." Bi-Chi frowned. "Are you speaking of Zhao Qianyuan? He is indeed a great threat. I swear that I will kill him at all costs." Sage shook his head. "It wasn't him. Zhao Qianyuan must be killed, but the person I am talking about is even more important." He raised his hand and pointed out. A speck of light appeared, swaying like a snowflake. It fused into Bi-Chi's forehead. "Remember this person. We must find him." Bi-Chi's heart turned cold. He cupped his fists together and said, "Lord Sage, do not worry. I will definitely kill him." It was actually an unfamiliar face. When did such a proud son of heaven appear in the path of devils? But since it was an order from the sage, he only needed to remember it and follow it. Sage nodded. "Go back. Reorganize the army and train up the fiercest vicious beasts. When my monster race reappears in the world, you will be the sharpest sword in our hands. Chi knelt down and kowtowed heavily. Please take care. He stood up and strode away. Sage watched him leave, a bit of hesitation in his eyes. He knew that he should immediately find Qinyu and kill him. But the storm in the Demon Ascension Gate's small world had yet to calm down. If he were to attack now, it was likely he would arouse the suspicions of the demonic path and affect his entire plan. Thus, after thinking it over, the sage finally gave up on attacking. Even if you are outstanding enough and have obtained many great strokes of good fortune, you are still too young. Even if I die, I won't give you enough time to grow and harm my race. So, you will definitely die. The only difference is whether it is sooner or later. You must die. A calm and deep voice echoed through the cave, producing echoes, as if it were some powerful prophecy. Heavenly Demon City. Qinyu was startled awake from his cultivation. In that moment just now, a great fear rose in his heart, as if he had been locked onto by a vicious beast in a rainforest. But now, when he tried to sense it again, there was no such feeling. It was like everything just now had been an illusion. Qinyu's complexion darkened. He frowned for a long time and took a deep breath to suppress his tumbling thoughts. He closed his eyes and tried to cultivate again, but he couldn't calm his heart no matter what. Unknown dangers always caused one to be more anxious. After several failed attempts to enter meditation, Qinyu simply stood up. He pushed open the training room's stone door and walked into the courtyard. This was the best courtyard of Don Perchin, and it naturally lived up to its reputation. The courtyard was large and the scenery was beautiful. Qinyu quietly looked around for a moment. He felt the heavy feeling in his chest lighten a little. He looked up at the sky, opened the courtyard door, and walked towards the inn's front yard. This was already the third day after he left the city lord mansion. Everything had been calm and peaceful, but Qinyu knew that the demonic path was surely investigating what happened in the small world with all their strength. When he went out this time, he also had the intention of finding out more information. After all, the situation in the small world had been far too strange. It was like there was an invisible hand manipulating everyone from start to finish. Qinyu thought of that great hand that pressed down from the heavens. Its might was limitless and terrifying. If it weren't for the demon head appearing in the skies at the critical moment and forcing it back, it would have been difficult for him to stand here. Duan's sand ran over like a gust of wind. His bent waist was so large that it left one worried, as if he might snap at any moment. Lord Yabin, what do you need? Qinyu lightly said, find a quiet seat and bring some light dishes. Also, make sure the wine is good. Duan San smiled. Lord Yabin, rest assured that our snowflake wine is famous far and wide. The shopkeeper has a 100-year-old jar in his collection. I will immediately bring it over for you. My lord, please come this way. We will go to the third floor. Because Duan San was far too enthusiastic, Qinyu received a great deal of attention along the way. Luckily, when the true demon guard had invited people, many people had been scared away, so there weren't many people that saw Qinyu. Thus, most of them only glanced at him out of curiosity. They thought he was some rich playboy with a great background and didn't want to provoke trouble, so they all looked away. The third floor was close to Bright Dawn Lake. At this time, a gentle breeze was blowing, bringing with it a bit of moisture. Looking down, one could clearly see young men and women playing on the lakeside. There was a young girl in a swimsuit lying on a chair. At first glance, all of her beauty was reflected in her eyes. It was truly wonderful. Even if she didn't have any dark thoughts, just looking at her was enough to make one happy. Qinyu nodded and sat down. As Duan San saw the smile on his face, he felt his spirits rise 100 times. "My lord, please wait a moment. I will immediately go and prepare." Perhaps this was the fastest speed in Don Perch restaurant's history. Not long after Chin Yu sat down, 12 plates of hot and cold fruits were brought in. The shopkeeper also personally brought in a jar of wine. Just by looking at the warm color of the wine jar, one could tell it was aged. When it was opened, the fragrance of wine wafted out. Chin Yu drank the wine and ate the delicacies carefully prepared in the kitchen. Without batting an eyelid, he heard the conversations of several people at a table not too far away. Yesterday, the demonic path had announced to the world what happened in the small world. They didn't conceal anything at all, and the casualties were disastrous. This caused the entire land of divinity and demons to shake. Almost all large influences immediately issued statements of condolences to the demonic path disciples that had died and expressed sympathy for the demonic path. At the same time, they strongly condemned these acts of terrorism that stirred up chaos in the world. Soon, the demonic path issued a second announcement. They would not hesitate to pay any price to find the person who killed the demonic path disciples. No matter who it was, as long as they knew something and didn't report it, they would be punished the same as the murderer, and their entire family would be exterminated. As the several people at the table spoke of this announcement filled with monstrous killing intent, their faces were filled with pride. The only one that dared to publicly threaten the entire world and forcefully announce the extermination of their entire family was their demonic path. Chin Yu couldn't help but reveal a look of praise. He wondered who it was that made such a public announcement to the world, revealing the tyrannical strength of the demonic path as well as a powerful will. Thinking about it, it should be some great figure that soared above the highest heavens. Exterminating their entire family was truly fierce and overbearing. He lifted a hand and drained his cup. The Sure family brother and sister were also on the 3rd floor, but they were too far away so Chin Yu didn't notice them. "Little sister, let's go. Let's try our luck. Perhaps there will be a chance." Sure Ziji clenched his teeth. "If we wait any longer, we will only be sitting ducks." Sure Qingqing's heart skipped a beat. She had always been overcautious, but she never imagined that their Sure family would be forced into a desperate situation. If they didn't think of a way to save themselves, they would really be ruined. At this time, she naturally had to try any chance she could. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Big brother is right. We cannot wait any longer." Sure Ziji stood up. "Let's go now." The two of them stood up. But as luck would have it, before they arrived, 2 figures had already arrived at the window overlooking the lake. They were also a man and a woman. Sure Qingqing's eyes flashed with annoyance. This Yao Bin was an elusive person. If she couldn't speak with him today, she didn't know when she would see him again. And what the Sure family lacked the most right now was time. It was all her fault for being too conflicted just now, otherwise how could someone else have rushed ahead of her? Sure Ziji's complexion paled. He strode forwards. The experiences of these past 2 days had caused the proud and arrogant young master of an aristocratic family to be filled with rage. Suddenly, the woman in front of him turned around. Sure Ziji's eyes instantly blurred and he drooled. In his eyes, this woman's face was blurry, but there was an indescribable beauty to her. She was simply the most perfect woman in his fantasies. Her eyes were filled with warmth and tenderness. His breathing deepened and his heartbeat quickened. "Big brother." Sure Qingqing was shocked. She looked at him dripping with sweat, his face flushed red, his breathing labored, and his appearance of infatuation. She hurriedly pulled him back. But this pull wasn't able to rouse Sure Ziji. Sure Qingqing didn't care about her face. She picked up a cup of cold tea from the table and splashed it onto his face. The red-faced young master shirt suddenly sobered up. He looked at his little sister's anxious expression as well as the teacup in her hand that hadn't been set down yet. His heart trembled and a cold chill surged through him. At the same time, his legs weakened and he swayed. Chingching said, "Big brother, what's wrong?" Ziji's eyes were filled with fear. He looked at the two people in front of him. "It's nothing. Let's return to our room first." His voice was hoarse. "Okay." Chingching wasn't stupid. She had already realized something was wrong. She quickly called over the juniors of her family and supported Ziji away. Qin Yu looked at the man sitting across from him. This man was incomparably handsome and had a calm bearing. He looked to be in his 30s and his eyes were warm and clear, filled with the vicissitudes of life. Next to him was a beautiful woman who exuded a mature aura. Her waist was slender and her chest was straight. Her figure was graceful, like a ripe peach that seemed as if a single touch would cause water to flow out. The man was handsome and the woman was charming. No matter how one looked at it, this was a couple that made one envious. But at this time, all Qin Yu felt in his heart was nervousness. No, it was more accurate to say that he was extremely nervous. Whether it was the purple moon or the cosmic sea-cross bell, both of them had endowed Qin Yu with an extremely keen sensing ability. Moreover, after activating a portion of his great Tao body, he could almost see the invisible rules of the world. The man and woman in front of him seemed ordinary, but in Qin Yu's eyes, the rules around them twisted, forming a complete chaos. It was like they were walking black holes. Qin Yu didn't doubt that either man or woman had the terrifying strength to easily crush him. Calamity Immortal Realm. And in Heavenly Demon City, in the current situation, the only Calamity Immortals that dared to appear in public were super powerhouses of the demonic path. Could it be that what he did in the small world had already been exposed? But if it was exposed, Qin Yu didn't believe that they would wait 3 days before returning. This was because the temptation of demon blood crystals was something that not even a Calamity Immortal could resist. Forcefully maintaining his composure, Qin Yu displayed 120% of his strength. He frowned, a bit puzzled. He hesitantly asked, "Is there something you two need?" The white-clothed man had a light expression. He smiled, "Meeting here is fate. Won't you invite us to drink a cup of wine?" Qin Yu suddenly said, "You two must have smelled the fragrance of wine. This snowflake wine is indeed rich and mellow. I was just feeling lonely drinking it alone, so you two came at just the right time." He lifted his hand. Duan San, who had already noticed him, ran over. "My lord, what are your orders?" Qin Yu said, "Add 2 more sets of chopsticks." The food was soon delivered. Qin Yu personally poured wine cups. He smiled and said, "Please." Duan San drew to the side. He couldn't help but roll his eyes. Just who were these 2 people? How arrogant. Duan San viewed Qin Yu as a benefactor that could change his destiny. He instinctively didn't want Qin Yu to suffer any losses. Even if it was something as trivial as this, but that woman was truly beautiful. With just a single glance, he almost had a shameful hard time. The white-clothed man picked up a wine cup and sniffed it. He nodded, "It's really good." He lifted a hand and drank it. He closed his eyes, as if savoring the aftertaste. The woman beside him suddenly said, "Yao Bin, how much of what happened in the small world did you hide?" Qin Yu's complexion changed. He asked, "Who are you two?" The woman lightly said, "You only need to answer." Qin Yu took a deep breath. His complexion darkened, as if he would erupt at any moment. At this time, the white-clothed man opened his eyes. "We were just curious and asked. If little friend doesn't want to answer, then don't say anything." Qin Yu's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. After several breaths of time, he sighed. Whatever. Since I already have my heart set on the demonic path, even if I don't say anything today, do you think I can always avoid it? He faced the two people. It's true that I hid something, but everyone has secrets they don't want others to know. I can only say that I have already said everything I know about the key matters. The white-clothed man smiled. He placed the wine cup on the table. With a light cracking sound, the world around Chinyu instantly shook. His heart began to beat uncontrollably. It pushed his blood through his blood vessels and raced through his body at high speeds, emitting a deep rumbling sound. Across from him, the white-clothed man's eyes brightened for a moment before he composed himself. He glanced at Chinyu and stood up. Because of the sudden change in the small world, there have been serious casualties. The demonic path has decided to absorb all the cultivators that managed to leave the small world alive. So, congratulations little friend, you will soon be able to fulfill your wish and become a member of the demonic path. He turned and walked out. The beautiful woman who exuded a seductive aura swept her eyes over Chinyu, a bit surprised. Then, she followed behind the white-clothed man. It was only when they reached the ground floor that Chinyu regained his composure. He gradually regained control of his body and his heartbeat returned to normal. He stood up and walked to the opposite side of the third floor. When he looked down, he could no longer see the figure of the man and woman. Chinyu's complexion was cloudy and uncertain. He muttered, "Just who are they?" The white-clothed Lord Demon Envoy had a calm expression as he walked along the long willow embankment of Bright Dawn Lake. There were many people coming and going, but not a single one of them could see him, much less touch him. Often, when there was still some distance between them, they would be pushed away. And what was strange was that from start to finish, no one noticed him at all. Yen Lu's footsteps were light as she followed behind him. From time to time, she would look up at his back. Her eyes were filled with tenderness and longing, without the slightest bit of the dignified bearing of a calamity immortal. Finally, the Lord Demon Envoy stopped. He faced Bright Dawn Lake, his eyes calm and tranquil. Yen Lu pulled back her hair. "Do you value this young man very much?" The Demon Envoy lightly said, "He has enough qualifications for me to value him." Yen Lu curled her lips. "Let's not talk about his strength first, but he is quite slippery." The Demon Envoy said, "In today's situation, if it were anyone else, they would have to pretend that they didn't know our identities." He paused for a moment and continued to say, "Having a brain is always better than having no brain. At least in this dangerous world, you can live longer." Yen Lu's eyes sparkled. "Do you really think highly of him?" The Demon Envoy shook his head. "I only have a suspicion." His eyes suddenly sharpened. For all these years, this junior hasn't had the slightest bit of fame spread out. But one day he soared into the world and became a peerless proud son of heaven of the demonic path. How could there be so many Zhao Qinyuans in this world? So, this in itself makes one suspect him. Yen Lu revealed a thoughtful expression. "You are saying that Yao Bin might be related to what happened in the small world." The Demon Envoy stepped forwards. "I have no evidence and this is only my guess. But, I will suppress him for a period of time. If there is a problem then it will naturally be exposed. If there isn't, then consider this a tempering experience for him and I will compensate him in the future." The Demon Envoy turned his back to Yen Lu and avoided her gaze. A trace of guilt flashed in his eyes. In truth, he wasn't good at lying, especially when he was deceiving a woman who had loved him for so many years. But, he couldn't allow any mistakes to occur in this matter. He had to be careful. As the revered Demon Envoy of the Holy Palace, he had suddenly led the true demon guards to Heavenly Demon City. This had already aroused the attention of all sides and every move he made would be interpreted. But at this time, besides a bit of guilt, the demon envoy was also filled with excitement and joy. In fact, he even had to work extremely hard to maintain his calm. After waiting for countless years, this day had finally arrived. He would hide his thoughts and secretly pay attention to Qin Yu's growth until one day he had enough responsibility. Chapter 5:17. The Shi family brother and sister received an urgent message from their home. Although they were worried, their faces lit up with joy. This was because the message said that a noble family of the demonic path had returned to their fiefdom and the Shi family had taken this chance to seek refuge with them. After some consideration, the other party had agreed to accept them. This proved that the Shi family was no longer a rootless duckweed. Now that they had their own backing, it wasn't as easy as others to move against them. The meaning of their father's message was for them to immediately return home so that they wouldn't fly into a rage out of shame and be schemed against by others outside. The Shi family brother and sister were overjoyed. There was no need to say anything more. They immediately ordered the cultivators at home to pack up and leave. Duan San watched as the group of people happily left. Yesterday, these people had been frowning and distressed, but now they were so happy. He couldn't understand what was going on. It was as if he didn't understand why he had suddenly come into conflict with a guest. He clearly hadn't cursed anyone at all. He opened his mouth to speak, but the guest across from him didn't give him a chance to explain. With a kick to the chest, Duan San felt his chest tighten and he spat out a mouthful of blood. His complexion paled and he was barely breathing. "You disgraceful thing, don't think that just because you've latched onto my thigh that you can be arrogant in front of me. Today I'll let you know why flowers are so red." Qi Yunshu was dressed in silk robes and a jade belt, his aura overflowing with arrogance. The shopkeeper was sweating profusely. He bowed and smiled. "Young Master Qi, please be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to the level of this dirty trash. You disgraceful thing, you actually dare to be so rude to young Master Qi. See if I don't skin you alive later. Hurry up and scram." Qi Yunshu coldly sneered. "Hold on, I'm in a bad mood today so I want to make fun of him. You don't need to worry about this matter, otherwise don't blame me for not giving you face." The shopkeeper's smile stiffened. He wanted to say something more, but under Qi Yunshu's icy cold gaze, he swallowed his words. As the head shopkeeper of Dawn Perch Restaurant, he could be considered a top character. There was no need for him to be so cowardly, but as luck would have it, the Qi family was one of the hidden masters of Dawn Perch Restaurant. He was someone who worked for others, so how could he dare to act tough in front of his master? He couldn't bear to look at Duan San. He sighed and drew back. Qi Yunshu's face lit up. He coldly sneered and waved his hand. "What are you all standing around for? Bring this brat over. This young master wants to know who gave him the courage to do this." A group of burly guards rushed up and started punching and kicking Duan San. Although these people held back, Duan San-er's face was still bruised and swollen, and his whole body softened into a puddle of mud. By the time he was pulled over, he had already fainted. "Pah!" A cloud of cold air smashed into his face, instantly freezing the skin on his face. A stabbing pain pierced straight into his heart, and Duan San-er woke up with a pitiful scream. As he opened his mouth and pulled on his facial muscles, the frozen skin quickly burst open, revealing slender cracks that quickly flowed out. Qi Yunshu frowned in disgust. He took out a jade ruler and lifted Duan San-er's chin. "Brat, tell us who your backer is. Let's see if they can shake us. Otherwise, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave today." Duan San-er was startled. From these words, he could hear a ruthless and bloodthirsty tone. If he didn't give a satisfactory answer, these people would really kill him. Of course, in order to maintain basic order, these people would be punished afterwards. But, at most they would be fined some spirit stones. As for killing someone, there was no need to think about it. Young master, what do you want to know? His mouth was leaking air and most of his teeth had fallen out. As he thought about how he had been so high-spirited just now, Duan-san almost cried. Chi Yunshu waved his hand and the jade ruler emitted a loud cracking sound. Duan-san's bruised cheeks suddenly swelled up and 2 more teeth flew out. That's not the right answer. Think carefully about what I asked. Duan-san's head was spinning. There were layers upon layers of people in front of him, but as he heard these words, his heart still shrank. Chi Yunshu and the others had deliberately stirred up trouble today. They naturally didn't have any intention of making things difficult for him, and Duan-san was well aware of this. He didn't have the qualifications to do so. Yes, even if someone wanted to make things difficult for him, that still depended on whether or not he had the qualifications. Since they didn't want to make things difficult for him, then as he thought about what Chi Yunshu was asking him, Duan-san shivered. He already guessed the only possibility. These people had come for Lord Yabin. To put it more elegantly, this was called a fire at the city gates bringing disaster to the fish in the moat. To put it more crudely, this was being unjustly attacked. If he said Yabin's name, then he shouldn't have anything to do with it. But, did he really dare to say it? Yao Bin was someone that even the true demon guards had politely asked to leave. If he angered him then he could simply move a finger and he would be beyond redemption. Moreover, he might even implicate his little sister. If he didn't say it, then at most he would be the only one who would suffer. He might not really die. Duan-san wasn't stupid. He knew how to calculate this debt. Young Master Chi, it was all because I had eyes but failed to see that I offended you. It has nothing to do with anyone else. I ask young Master Chi to be magnanimous and spare my rotten life. Chi Yunshu slapped his hand down again. Both sides of his mouth swelled up. Brat, I'll ask you one last time. Will you speak or not? This time he was truly angered. He had been entrusted by someone to come here, not to show off his power and prestige. He had already made a promise to the others. If he didn't obtain anything then that would be the same as picking up a stone and smashing it on his own foot. Duan-san felt as if his bones were cracking. The pain was so intense that his vision darkened. He forcefully shook his head but he couldn't speak. Chi Yunshu was enraged. Good. Very good. Since you want to die, then I will fulfill your wish. Beat him to death and if anything happens, I will take responsibility. Duan-san closed his eyes. But the expected storm of blows didn't arrive. Instead, there was the sound of several heavy objects falling to the ground. Then, pained groans entered his ears. Duan-san opened his eyes and saw a black-robed figure in front of him. He choked with sobs and struggled to kneel on the ground, kowtowing. Qin Yu's voice was calm. There's nothing else for you to do. Leave. Chi Yunshu was startled. He was immediately overjoyed. Who are you? This brat had actually jumped in here himself. This was truly a case of wearing out iron shoes in search of nothing. Qin Yu had no expression. Screw off. He was disinclined to bother with this sort of thing that couldn't be brought to the surface. But, just who was it that had deliberately set him up today? Things weren't simple at all. Chi Yunshu was enraged. He clenched his teeth, you bastard. Who do you think you are that you dare to be so rude to me? Men, capture him for me. The ones who were truly here to capture him weren't some useless people on the ground, but true masters, his father's bodyguards. In order to mobilize these people, Qi Yunshu had spent a great deal of time and effort. He had paid a great price to have his family relent. But as long as he could accomplish this, everything was worth it. Whoosh, whoosh, 3 figures hauled forwards, all of them holding sabers in their hands. Their faces were firm and determined. Qi Yunshu lifted a hand and pointed. It's him. In the next moment, 3 radiant saber lights hauled forwards like waterfalls falling from the highest heavens. Just looking at them was enough to shake one's soul. What a strong saber intent. This was a true killing saber. It was unknown just how many lives had been cut down to condense such a concentrated killing intent. Moreover, the strongest thing was that although these 3 saber lights weren't one, they came from the same source. It was as if they had cultivated the same saber technique, so when they slashed down, they complemented each other. 3 sabers were one saber, coming straight at them. Qi Yu's eyes flashed, a bit of surprise in them. 3 early blue sea cultivators could actually erupt with killing power comparable to a revered level master when they joined forces. However, this was only enough to surprise him. As for worrying, that wasn't necessary at all. He lifted a hand and pressed forwards. The radiant saber lights seemed to crash into an invisible mountain, trembling and collapsing. The 3 saber-wielding people revealed shocked expressions. They nearly couldn't hold on to their weapons. With stuffy coughs, they were forced backwards, each step causing the ground to crack. After several steps, the 3 of them were barely able to stop themselves. Their blood tumbled and the webbing between their thumb and forefinger had been split open by the saber hilt, causing blood to constantly drip down. As they looked at Qi Yu, their eyes were filled with awe and shock. This was because they knew that this person could easily crush their attacks. If he wanted to kill them, it wouldn't be difficult at all. One of the guards cupped his hands together. "Thank you for showing mercy." He turned and said, "Young master, it's time for us to leave." To have such strength at such a young age, he definitely wasn't a good opponent to provoke. Seeing that Qi Yu didn't have any intention of dealing a heavy blow, it was best to leave first. Qi Yunshu was stunned. He never thought that these guards that his father always boasted about as being incomparably fierce were actually so useless. With just a single saber strike, they had been forced back by someone and each of them had been injured. This was too shameful. His face flushed red. He stomped his feet and cursed, "Trash. All of you are trash." He pointed a finger at Qi Yu. "You bastard, you know who I am and yet you dare to touch my people." Qi Yu had a calm expression. "I don't know who you are and I have no interest in you. I am only reminding you not to provoke me again." The complexions of the 3 guards changed. From this calm voice, they could feel a bit of blood. They said, "Young master, if you don't leave now, we will report today's events truthfully to the old master." Qi Yunshu's complexion paled. He turned and walked away. The 3 guards relaxed. They cupped their hands together towards Qi Yu and quickly followed behind. Just as Qi Yunshu was about to leave, he suddenly stopped and coldly glared at Duan San. Nothing had gone smoothly today, and it was all because of this brat. Originally saying that he would make fun of him was only an excuse, but now he really was a punching bag. "Duan San, is it? I heard you have a little sister and she looks quite good." Duan San stiffened, fear in his eyes. Qi Yunshu turned his head and coldly sneered. "There will always be a time when she isn't around, right? At that time, just watch as I play with them to death." Qi Yu frowned. His silent appearance caused Qi Yunshu to feel much better. He couldn't help but laugh. This was the style that a young master should have. Wherever he lost face, he would take it back from there. Humph humph. Those that dared to oppose him would never have a good ending. Qi Yu let out a breath, a bit of helplessness on his face. Why is it that there are always people who vividly interpret the words "the ignorant have no fear"? The complexions of the three guards changed. They turned and raised their sabers. Although they were angry at Qi Yunshu for acting so recklessly, they couldn't watch helplessly as something happened to him. But this time, Qin Yu didn't give them a chance to use their sabers. A gust of wind blew past them and the three guards were sent flying backwards, blood spraying out from their noses and mouths. Chapter 5:18. Dawn Perch Restaurant was deathly silent. The shopkeeper's legs trembled and his face was ashen. He never thought that a minor matter would develop into such a situation. He opened his mouth, wanting to say that he should let go of young Master Qi first and that anything could be discussed. But he was suppressed by Qin Yu's aura and didn't dare to make a single sound. Qin Yu stared at the ruthless Qi Yunshu, his eyes indifferent. He had no thoughts of inquiring about any information from him. This sort of brainless young master was clearly someone else's pawn. Even if he continued to investigate, he wouldn't be able to obtain any results. Qin Yu suddenly felt very irritated. He had dealt with the Black Demon sect, tempered himself in a small world, rushed into the City Lord Mansion, and even been shocked by two mysterious calamity immortals a few days ago. It wasn't easy for him to reach where he was today. He was just about to smoothly enter the demonic path and achieve the crucial step of his revenge, so why did he have to stir up trouble? Couldn't he just be honest and live in harmony with each other? The pupils of the three guards shrank. They could feel the cold aura coming from Qin Yu's body. He really did have killing intent. Sir, don't be impulsive. Today's matter is all my family's young master's fault. If you can be magnanimous, our Qi family will be eternally grateful. A guard hurriedly said. Qi Yunshu didn't believe that Qin Yu would really dare to move against him. He had always been a lawless person, thinking that he was number 3 in this world. Brat, you are dead. I guarantee you that you will die a miserable death. Even though his neck was being grabbed and it was incomparably difficult for him to speak, young Master Qi still spat out these words. His eyes were filled with even more hatred and malice. Qin Yu suddenly smiled. It was as if he had suddenly found an important reason to smoothly make a decision. Let go of junior apprentice brother Qi. A cold and gloomy voice sounded out. A young cultivator with a slightly blue complexion appeared on the scene. Qi Yunshu was overjoyed. Senior apprentice brother Ma. His eyes were filled with excitement. Hurry and save me. Kill him. The three guards' complexions darkened. They were worried about their young master's intelligence when he wasn't online. You are still in someone else's hands, so why are you shouting so arrogantly? Aren't you afraid that he will shake your hand and snap your neck? Ma Yunsong had a calm demeanor and he had the demeanor of a great master. He calmly nodded and said, Junior apprentice brother, rest assured. Since I am here, I won't allow anyone to touch you. He was overjoyed. As he spoke, he had finished his preparations. His cold eyes fell on Qin Yu, a sharp light flashing in them. During this period of time, the sect was striving for the support of the Qi family. If he could save Qi Yunshu, then that would absolutely be a great merit. Brat, thank you for giving me this opportunity. A sound wave that couldn't be heard by the human ear suddenly exploded in the air. Many people's eyes instantly went blank, and their consciousness fell into darkness. Although this darkness only lasted for an extremely short period of time before disappearing, it still caused the people in the inn to reveal expressions of horror. Curtain of darkness. A guest shouted in a low voice, instantly igniting the crowd. An old man who was watching the excitement had his calm expression wiped away, replaced with a grave expression. At such a young age, he actually managed to cultivate the curtain of darkness, the soul-burying sect's guardian divine ability. It is truly inconceivable. No wonder he's so confident. He's a young expert from the Soul Burial sect. It is rumored that when one cultivates the canopy of the dark heavens to a high level, one can cover 1 trillion living beings with a single thought, causing their souls to sink into eternal darkness. They will be cut off from the outside world and become a living dead that has lost its consciousness. You and I were only affected by the shock waves, so we can recover in a short period of time. If we were to face it head-on, I fear we would have to spend the rest of our lives in bed. Everyone sighed with emotion. Whispers spread into his ears, and in addition to the awe and reverence in everyone's eyes, Ma Tsung-yun straightened his back even more. His expression was indifferent, but there was also a bit of pity and helplessness, as if he were trying to act cool. Why did you have to make me do it? Everyone looked at him. As expected, he came from a famous sect and didn't rely on his strength to act recklessly. Even if he had a reason for what happened today, they still couldn't bear it. The eyes of many young women began to shine. It seemed that as long as little Ma was willing, he could enjoy a free warm bed service tonight. Until a cultivator hesitantly said, "It seems that young Master Chi is still being held." The surroundings fell silent. Ma Tsung-yun was forced to leave the environment he was enjoying. He looked at the person who spoke with dissatisfaction. His curtain of darkness had reached small success. As long as he was struck, there was no way he could break free. What was with this fellow's eyes? He really hadn't let go. Could it be his mortal body's instinct? Yes, that must be it. Ma Tsung-yun coughed. Junior apprentice brother Chi, you can free yourself now. Chi Yunchu's face turned purple. He cursed inwardly. You bastard, come and try. My hand is like cast iron, I can't move at all. Ma Tsung-yun felt that something was wrong. He took a deep breath and was about to step forwards when a calm voice echoed out from behind him. Junior apprentice nephew Ma, come back. You are not this little friend's match. His robe was half black and half white, his hair was half white, and his shoes were one black and one white. Although his attire was strange, when one looked at him, one's heart would naturally feel at peace. It was as if they were looking at someone close to them. At this time, he faintly smiled, his voice gentle and light. Little friend, how about letting him go first? Qin Yu remained silent. His smile didn't change. Today was only a misunderstanding. Let him go and explain things. What did you say? Qin Yu interrupted him. Daoist Black-White paused for a moment. I said that as long as you let him go, I can explain. He was interrupted again. Previous sentence. Daoist Black-White's smile became even warmer. I asked you to let him go. Qin Yu nodded. I'm sorry, I was a bit distracted just now so I didn't hear you clearly. His next words were like a slap to the face. Why? He was apologizing at first and then suddenly changing the topic. Was this really okay? Daoist Black-White thought that he had a good recuperation, but he was so angry that blue veins popped out from the corners of his eyes. If it weren't for his status, he would have already cursed it out loud. He winked at Chi Yunshu, but the normally clever and clever apprentice nephew Ma had been struck so hard that he had lost his soul. He simply didn't see anything. His mind was filled with only one thought, he's fine, he's fine, he's fine. How could he be fine? Daoist Black-White cursed him for being trash in his heart. Then, he could only step forward. Little friend, do you know that you should forgive and forget? There will always be people in this world that you cannot afford to provoke. The Qi family's young master has a precious status. If something happens to him, you won't be able to leave Heavenly Demon City. Do you really want to take this step? Chi Yunshu's brain was lacking oxygen and he was seeing stars. But, he still insisted on his right to speak. Elder Black-White, don't waste words with him, kill him. The three guards had dark lines on their foreheads once more. They discovered that the way everyone looked at their young master had turned into one of pity and concern for a mentally handicapped child. This level of intelligence, Daoist Black-White angrily cursed in his heart. If I had confidence I could kill him without injuring you, why would I need a brat like you to blabber here? Motsungyan's curtain of darkness had already reached a certain degree of maturity. After this person received it, he didn't show any reaction. Either his soul was tyrannical or he had a treasure on his body. This wasn't easy to deal with. The key point was that they had already stepped forward today, so they had to deal with this matter. Otherwise, let alone being on good terms with the Qi family, both sides would definitely fall out. As Daoist Black-White was distressed, Qinyu suddenly said, I will give you one more chance. As long as you can subdue me like apprentice nephew Black-White, I will cut my hands and let him go. Daoist Black-White couldn't be bothered with this irritating way of addressing him. He happily said, really? Qinyu nodded. Of course. Good. I will also display my curtain of darkness. I ask for your guidance. The words indicated that in his heart, he already considered Qinyu a cultivator on the same level. Since everyone was on the same level, it was reasonable for him to attack with his full strength. One couldn't help but admit that an old fox was indeed an old fox. With just a few words, he was able to play all sorts of tricks. The people of Dawn Perch residence all had strange complexions. This was because Qinyu's decision gave off the feeling that he wanted to take this chance to step down from the stage and release Black-White. This was completely different from his previous style. Wasn't he supposed to be cold and indifferent, unafraid of power? Just now he had a face that said, don't think I don't dare to kill you, but now he was acting like this. TSK, he really was shameless. Everyone looked at him with eyes full of contempt. As for how to step down, wasn't that simple? As long as Daoist Black-White attacked, he could take advantage of the chance to shake him a few times and then spit out a few mouthfuls of blood, saying that he was fierce and that they would meet again in the future, everything would be fine. Daoist Black-White also thought this in his heart. He looked at Qinyu with a deep meaning in his eyes, as if saying that he understood and didn't need to worry. Brat, do you know where my reputation as Daoist Black-White came from? Clothes, shoes, hair, and the like aren't important at all. Being white on the outside and black on the inside is a profound boundary. If you don't die today, how can I be on good terms with the Qi family? You can go in peace. There was another invisible humming sound. Everyone could hear it, but their minds only wavered for a moment before they regained their clarity. Of course, this wasn't because Daoist Black-White's curtain of darkness was weak, but because all of his strength was gathered within himself, with only a small amount of his aura leaking out. This made it even more terrifying. Qinyu stiffened. Everyone had expected this. Next, he would spit out blood. Little brat, your acting skills are far from good. Unfortunately, while the audience had guessed the opening, they didn't know what would happen next. Within Qinyu's soul space, Purple Moon and Mimi were busy fighting for food. A mass of black fog shivered and was instantly eaten up. Qinyu said, "Is that enough?" Mimi beamed. Not bad, it really is delicious." Purple Moon's light dimmed and she maintained a cold and aloof posture. She didn't respond to Qinyu's words, but looking at her appearance, she should be satisfied. Schwa, his consciousness returned to his body. Qinyu slowly said, "The Soul Burial Sect's curtain of darkness truly lives up to its reputation. There really weren't many foods that could catch the fancy of that little lass Mimi and Purple Moon." Daoist Black-White's mind shook, even concealing his disappointment. This boy was actually completely fine. His lips twitched and he squeezed out a smile, making an expression as if he were saying that their cooperation was quite good. "I also admire your strength. Today, gotcha, a clear sound spread out. The entire dawn perch-in fell deathly silent. Everyone's eyes widened, as if they had seen a ghost. They stared at Chinyu, at the corpse in his hand whose neck was bent at an exaggerated angle. Chi Yunshu's bloodshot eyes widened. There wasn't much panic in them, only disbelief, as if he were saying, "How could you dare to kill me?" But Chinyu had killed him. His actions were so clean that it surpassed everyone's expectations. If it weren't for the fact that he had to bring food for the two guests in his soul space, he would have already done it. Since there was no need to wait, why waste time? If he killed someone, there would definitely be trouble. At the very least, he would have thoroughly offended this Chi family. But Chinyu had his own reasons. The reason Chi Yunshu came here today was to draw him in, and this matter was inextricably related to the demon blood crystals. Chinyu didn't have any evidence, but he didn't need any evidence for this matter. He could freely prove himself. Thus, he killed someone. He used Chi Yunshu's death as a warning to everyone who tried to do something to him. He wasn't a soft persimmon. If they wanted to pinch him, then they would have to be prepared to die. Perhaps he was a bit impulsive, but Chinyu had to display the toughest attitude possible. Because once he retreated, these people would only take a yard after taking an inch. Chapter 5:19. Wasn't he supposed to take this chance to step down? How could he suddenly kill someone? This change in direction was a bit too big and nearly broke his waist. Everyone stared blankly at this scene, their minds blanking out. After an unknown period of time, some people finally regained their composure. They subconsciously shivered and began to draw back. They had never been afraid of things becoming too big for them to watch. But today's matter had surpassed their limits. If they continued to stay here, they might be caught up in a disaster. At that time, they wouldn't even have a place to cry. Of course, it was best to leave as soon as possible. There was no lack of smart people. Even if they didn't think of this at first, they still reacted as they saw the surrounding people draw back. In a few breaths' time, the dense crowd outside dispersed in all directions. There was a guest staying at Dawn Perch-in who didn't even return to his room. He turned and ran out of the inn. He absolutely couldn't stay here any longer. This was Heavenly Demon City's Chi family. Although they weren't a noble family of the demonic path, their true strength wasn't any worse than a true noble family of the demonic path. Although Chi Yunshu wasn't favored, he was still the son of the Chi family's main bloodline and had an incomparably honored status. Now that he was killed in his family's sphere of influence, how could this matter be settled? Daoist Black-White shivered. He could no longer maintain his calm and gentle tone. You killed Chi Yunshu, you actually killed him. This madman, did he not know that the Chi family's old ancestor liked this ignorant and incompetent grandson of his? Bastard, if you want to die then you actually want to drag them down with you. You really deserve to die. Chi Yunshu had died on the spot. Although it wasn't directly related to them, would the Chi family really think so? They would definitely vent their anger on them. Now, the only method was to kill this brat and use his head to exchange for the Chi family's forgiveness. Chinyu's eyes were calm. Since he decided to kill someone, he had naturally prepared himself for the consequences. I killed him, but what do you want? He let go and the corpse fell to the ground. This carefree attitude, he simply couldn't tolerate it. Daoist Black-White roared out, you evil beast, die for me. Bang, a wild aura shot into the skies. The ground shattered inch by inch. Countless beautifully trimmed flowers and grass were uprooted and turned to dust. Chinyu narrowed his eyes. Although he looked a bit strange, his strength wasn't bad. But compared to Zhao Qinyuan, he was far worse. At this moment, 3 cold-killing intents suddenly erupted, locking onto Daoist Black-White. He frowned and stopped what he was doing. Turning his head, his pupils shrank and he quickly restrained his aura. True Demon Guard. A layer of cold sweat instantly appeared on Daoist Black-White's forehead. Even if the position of the Holy Palace's Supreme Elder was currently vacant, the true Demon Guards were still the Holy King's personal guards in name. To oppose a true Demon Guard was the same as offending a Holy King. At other times it might have been better, but the various influences of the demonic path were all trying to gain the support of the Holy Palace. For something like this to occur at such a critical juncture, Daoist Black-White didn't doubt that he would die an incomparably miserable death in order to quell the anger of the Holy Palace. A true Demon Guard asked coldly, "What do you want to do?" Daoist Black-White squeezed out a smile. "This is a misunderstanding, a misunderstanding. I was just about to capture this murderer. Fellow Daoists, please take a look. The Qi family's direct descendant Qi Yunshu was killed by this murderer just now. His methods were extremely cruel." The Qi family, the three true demon guards furrowed their eyebrows, but they soon relaxed. "This matter will be investigated by the demonic path. You may draw back." In terms of cultivation, even if the three true demon guards joined forces, they still might not be Daoist Black-White's match. But, as the personal guards of the Holy King, their status was extremely high and they naturally had the confidence to do so. A true demon guard stepped forwards. He cupped his hands together and smiled. "Fellow Daoist Yaobin, we meet again." He had already seen these three people when they brought him to the City Lord Mansion last time. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. "May I ask why you three have come here?" The true demon guard said, "Today, the three of us have been ordered to deliver the documents and seals." His smile widened. "Congratulations, fellow Daoist Yaobin. After today, you are a member of the demonic path. I wish fellow Daoist a bright future." Daoist Black-White's eyes widened. He finally understood. No wonder this matter had to be investigated by the demonic path. This was the privilege of demonic path cultivators. Even if they committed a crime, they could only be punished by the demonic path. No one else was allowed to interfere. Wasn't this very overbearing and unreasonable? That's right, this was how it was. But the demonic path had this sort of qualifications and confidence. However, the attitudes of these three true demon guards seemed a bit too gentle. Even if they were facing someone from the demonic path, they should still remain cold and aloof. Could it be that this Yaobin's status was different? Daoist Black-White suddenly had a premonition that Qi Yunshu would die in vain today. In other words, because of Qi Yunshu's death, he was doomed to incur a great deal of trouble. As Daoist Black-White thought of this, he nearly cried. Everything was fine, so why did something like this have to happen to him? What an unlucky year. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He hadn't heard of this news yet, so how come the true demon guards had suddenly come? Moreover, they had come at such a perfect time. His thoughts raced. But at least this matter was beneficial to him. He quietly received the items and expressed his thanks to the three people. The true demon guard swept his eyes over Qi Yunshu's corpse. His eyes flashed. Fellow Daoist Yaobin, when a demonic path cultivator faces danger, they can randomly kill someone. He paused for a moment and continued to say, "Of course, even if the fault lies with fellow Daoist, as a demonic path disciple, you can still enjoy immunity. All you need to do is pay some spirit stones." This was the same as obtaining a legal license to kill someone. Moreover, it was issued by the demonic path, one of the strongest influences in the land of divinity and demons. No matter how he looked at it, it gave off the feeling of a gangster. But Qin Yu had to admit that this feeling wasn't bad at all. He smiled and said, "Thank you for the reminder, but for today's matter, I won't compensate you with a single spirit stone. Since he wanted to express his most unyielding attitude, he naturally had to do it to the end. In any case, he had already offended the Chi family, so he didn't fear the enmity between them deepening. The true demon guard's eyes brightened. He told Chinyu that 3 days from now, someone would bring him away. Without saying anything further, he cupped his hands together and bid his farewells. Since both sides weren't familiar with each other right now, going too far was as bad as falling short. Chinyu sent the 3 people away. Daoist Black-White didn't say a single word. He grabbed the still dazed Ma Tsongyun and brought Chi Yunshu's corpse with him. With a gloomy expression, he quickly left. At this moment, Black-White's mood was even worse. This was because he thought of something even worse. Offending a tyrannical junior wasn't anything at all, offending a demonic path disciple wasn't anything at all. But, when both sides superimposed on each other, that meant he had offended a tyrannical demonic path disciple. Moreover, he was very young and seemed to have great potential. This was truly hard to bear. Who knew just how far this boy would be able to walk in the future? Although he had a considerable status in the soul burial sect and the chances of him being punished in the future weren't high, even a 1% chance was enough to make him feel uncomfortable. After sending off the 3 true demon guards, Chinyu returned to the inn. Duan Ling Tian and the other 2 knelt to the ground with red eyes. "Thank you, my lord, thank you, my lord." He didn't know what Chinyu was thinking, but from what he saw, it was clear that Chinyu had killed someone today to help him. How could he not be grateful? As for whether or not the Chi family would retaliate against him because of this, he no longer cared. After all, he had picked up his life today. Once he returned, he would immediately arrange for his little sister to leave. As long as he stayed in Heavenly Demon City, the Chi family shouldn't try to track down his little sister's whereabouts. That was enough. The empty and messy Dawn Perch Inn was in a mess. The shopkeeper's complexion was pale white and he seemed to have lost his soul. He hadn't done anything wrong today. Chi Yunshu's death absolutely couldn't be blamed on him. But in this world, there was no such thing as absolute fairness. The Chi family's young master had died in the business he was responsible for, so how could he have any good ending? Perhaps the best result would be being expelled from Heavenly Demon City. If he offended the Chi family, he feared he wouldn't have any foothold in Heavenly Demon City in the future. He had toiled his entire life, starting from a small servant boy. How much pain and suffering had he suffered in order to climb up to his current status? Now that he had become nothing, who could accept that? Moreover, he wasn't alone right now. His entire family was counting on him to make a living. The shopkeeper looked at Chinyu. He should hate this person. If it weren't for him, would he have fallen to such a state? But he didn't dare to. Chi Yunshu had killed him just like that, and from the current situation, he didn't seem to have suffered any harm at all. Moreover, he was just an old man without any power or influence. Duan San crawled up and walked in front of the shopkeeper. He fell to his knees. "Uncle, although we are separated by several generations and our bloodline is thin, I know you took care of me, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to enter Dawn Perch Inn. Today, I have stirred up trouble for you. I fear this nephew will never be able to repay you in this life. In my next life, I will work like an ox or a horse to make it up to you." The shopkeeper's lips trembled. He let out a long sigh. "Hurry up and leave. The further you go, the better." Duan San smiled. "I will send my little sister away and then stay here. Otherwise, the Chi family definitely won't give up. I will have to give them an explanation." This explanation was his life. If he died, his little sister would live. The shopkeeper was a shrewd man. He quickly understood this point. He patted Duan San's shoulder with a trembling hand. Originally, I wanted to raise you into my successor. You brat, you are willing to endure hardship and you are also smart, but what a pity, your life isn't good. Yu could see that Duan-san was exuding a carefree and relaxed aura. This had nothing to do with strength or breadth of mind. Rather, it was a calm and unhurried expression that came from disregarding life and death. With a thought, he guessed what the two of them were thinking. He couldn't help but reveal a bit of appreciation in his eyes. This Duan-san was actually someone who cared deeply about relationships. When he was threatened by Chi Yunshu, he didn't say anything even when death was at hand. Although there was an 80% chance that this was because he was afraid of his little sister's retaliation, if he cared so much about family, he couldn't be too bad. If it were him, he would likely make the same choice as Duan-san. Subconsciously, Yu thought of Guling. Was that girl doing well? Although the world was vast, he had very few family members. Ning Ling was one, and so was Ling. A person's fate was mysterious and wonderful. Duan-san racked his brains to curry favor with Yu, but when he fell into a hopeless situation and was prepared to welcome death, the opportunity actually fell into his hands. Yu called out to Duan-san, who was about to leave. I looked through the document just now. Demonic Path disciples have the right to recruit several personal servants. If you are willing, I can give you 2 spots. Duan-san was stunned. The shopkeeper kicked him to his knees. You little brat, what are you waiting for? Duan-san quickly kowtowed, tears flowing down his face. He knew that Yu was saving his life, and even his little sister's life. Otherwise, with a weak and frail girl like her, without him to shelter her from the wind and rain, just how long would she be able to live? It wasn't that he couldn't think of it, but that he didn't want to think of it. He didn't dare to think of it, because as long as he was alive, there would be hope. How could he bring his little sister down with him? Before his mother died, Duan-san had promised to protect his little sister for the rest of his life. Even if he didn't accomplish this, if he died in front of his little sister and saw his mother in the underworld, she probably wouldn't be too angry. But now, all difficulties had vanished. He didn't need to die and his little sister wouldn't leave him. Good, this was far too good. Snot and tears mixed together. Duan-san's face was a mess. He looked up at Yu with teary eyes. From this moment on, he made up his mind, in this life, for the rest of his life, he would use it to repay this kindness. Yu's eyes were a bit sore. It had been a long time since he had this sort of mood swings. He took a deep breath, his voice unconsciously gentle. Go. Bring your little sister here. He turned and walked towards the back courtyard. He paused for a moment and then said, Go to the courtyard I live in. Don't stay outside. Chapter 520. The 3 true demon guards left Dawn Perch Inn and boarded a speed car to return to the City Lord Mansion. The one who had been speaking with Yu was clearly the one with the most prestige out of the 3. He leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes in meditation. The 2 true demon guards looked hesitant. They looked at each other and one of them said, Big brother, aren't your words too straightforward today? Wang Chao opened his eyes. We're all brothers, so there's no need to hide anything. Do you two think that I shouldn't remind Yao Bin about killing people? The corners of his mouth turned up. Fine. Let's not talk about anything else. Even if the Qi family finds out about what I said today, what do you think they can do? Do they dare to deal with me? The true fiend guard glared. They dare. Wang Chao smiled. Isn't that enough? Remember, us brothers were lucky and we suffered a great deal to become true demon guards. As long as we have this identity, no one can touch us unless we commit a great crime. The third true demon guard said, "Big brother, that's not what we mean. Although we're not afraid of the Chi clan, they're still the tyrants of Heavenly Demon City. You and I have relatives and friends behind us. If we offend them, they won't dare to do anything on the surface, but it's still disgusting if they do something behind our backs." Wang Chao pointed and said, "Second bro, listen carefully. Third bro's words are more accurate. However, I can't explain too much about this matter. You just have to remember that I have my reasons for befriending Yao Bin." After pausing for a moment, he decided to reveal a little more. Whether the three of us can achieve meteoric success in the future will most likely depend on this person. He wouldn't tell them that he had inadvertently seen the demon envoy and Lord Yan Lu enter Dawn Perch residence in private. Furthermore, they wouldn't say that it was Yao Bin who had troubled the two of them to come here. With Lord Demon Envoy's status, would he make a trip just for a nobody? Even though Wang Chao didn't know why, he knew that this was his opportunity. Although life was long, there were only a few opportunities in the world. He would definitely not miss it. Chi family. Dominating the Heavenly Devil sect for tens of thousands of years, its inheritance lasting for 10 generations. Geniuses came forth in large numbers and experts were as common as the clouds. That was exactly what he said. Although such a Chi clan was unable to be conferred the title of a noble family due to certain reasons, its true strength and foundation were already sufficient. In the Heavenly Demon City, it might be a little too much to describe them as absolute, but it was definitely not common. But today, a direct descendant of the Chi clan was casually killed in the Heavenly Devil City like slaughtering a chicken or a dog. This sort of matter hadn't occurred for many years. Thus, when Chi Yunshu's corpse was sent back to the Chi family by Daoist Black-White, the entire Chi family residence was instantly set ablaze. The violent killing intent soared to the heavens. Countless cultivators in Heavenly Devil City were shocked. They widened their eyes and waited for the Chi clan's response. This matter had already spread through the entire Heavenly Devil City at the fastest speed possible through the mouths of the scattered cultivators who had left Dawn Perch residence. The killer, Yao Bin, was now one of the new disciples of the demonic path. Soon, the Chi family's response spread to the outside world. The Chi family's old ancestor personally appeared to suppress the agitated Chi family juniors who wanted to kill and take revenge. His original words were, "If you don't want to live, then don't implicate the entire Chi family. That is a disciple of the demonic path. Touching him is disrespect to the demonic path." These words were a bit boastful, but the general meaning was correct. Killing a demonic path disciple was absolutely not a trivial matter. Unless it was done stealthily or in some special situation, once it was discovered, the demonic path would never let this matter rest. In terms of protecting one's own people, no one dared to call themselves first. In the entire land of divinity and demons, if the demonic path thought they were second, then no one dared to call themselves first. Many people were disappointed. They couldn't help but secretly say some sour words. What 10,000-year-old Chi family? They were also characters that bullied the weak and feared the strong. Those who said these words didn't understand the way of survival of a wealthy family. This was because no matter what you wanted to do, your slogan had to be correct. And the slogan you shouted often had nothing to do with what you wanted to do. In fact, both sides even contradicted each other. In the ancestral temple, Chi Yunshu's corpse lay on the cold floor. His complexion was pale white and his eyes were still wide open, filled with disbelief at the moment of his death. Chi Dongtai's eyes were half closed. He sat in a high chair and his voice was light. "I already said that people shouldn't be too arrogant, otherwise sooner or later disaster will fall upon them. Sixth brother was obedient in front of me, but once he left the family he acted like a tyrant. Although I am old, my eyes aren't blind, so I naturally know this. That's why he suffered a fatal disaster today. He only has himself to blame. An indifferent voice spread out in the ancestral temple. The heads of the fourth branch lowered their heads, not daring to speak up. Everyone knew that although the old man cursed and cursed, the truth was that in his heart, the one he liked the most was this ignorant and incompetent Chi Yun-shu. He had once privately told an old servant that this little monkey resembled him the most when he was young. Although he appeared calm on the surface, it was unknown just how angry he was in his heart. And indeed, Chi Dongtai's eyes flashed open. But, remember this. For our Chi family to rise from being small and weak to become one of the overlords of Heavenly Demon City, and for our lineage to continue to this day, that is not because we understand reason, but because we are ruthless enough. Sixth brother is in the wrong, but even if he deserves to die, we can only ask our ancestors to punish him and kill him. There is no reason for others to do so. Right now, many people are looking at the Chi family as a joke. But, let them laugh, because the truth trumps all. I will not allow Yao Bin to enter the demonic path alive. He killed people in Heavenly Demon City, so he must remain here. The third branch head fell to his knees, tears and snot streaming down his face. Thank you, old ancestor. If sixth brother knows this in the underworld, he can rest in peace. He had over a dozen sons, so it was worth debating just how sad he was. But, on the surface, he had to pretend to be in so much pain that he wished he were dead. Chi Dongtai frowned in disgust, as if he didn't like third brother's exaggerated performance. But, as he thought about how his son had died, he endured his reprimanding. He turned and said in a soft voice, "Go. Let him die a bit more peacefully." The old servant that had followed him for many years grinned, revealing 2 missing yellow teeth. He nodded and left, vanishing into the shadows. Looking at this old fellow who was even older than their father and seemed as if he could kick himself at any moment, the other 4 heads revealed looks of awe. Their father's strength, besides the legendary old ancestor who was still in life and death seclusion, was naturally the strongest in the Chi family. But this old servant was the one they feared the most. Since their father had sent him today, Yao Bin was doomed. Chi Dongtai closed his eyes. Let's wait here. There will soon be a result. I cannot allow sixth brother to die alone. Dawn Perch residence. Yesterday's bustling hustle and bustle had dispersed. All that was left behind was a desolate scene. In the entire inn, besides a few servants on duty, there wasn't a single person to be seen. Because the illumination array formations had been destroyed, large swathes of the area were in a state of darkness. As one walked in, they subconsciously felt a bit of fear. The old servant's figure walked out from the darkness. He looked up and grinned. Not too far away, a servant opened his mouth, but no words came out. He clutched his neck and fell to the ground. Blood gushed out from his nose and mouth, quickly soaking the ground. The old servant slowly walked forwards. His speed was slow, his footsteps echoing in the empty inn. But what was strange was that every time he passed through the darkness, his figure seemed to fuse into it. When he appeared again, he was already far away. So, it didn't take much time for the old servant to enter the rear courtyard. He stood in the light and looked at the independent courtyard in front of him. He nodded, as if he appreciated the construction style of this gate. Then, he lifted a hand and slapped it forward. The incomparably sturdy door that was reinforced by the array formation seemed to have suffered a terrifying corrosion. Without a sound, it directly turned into countless black ashes that scattered down. Wisps of black fog spread along the ruins of the array formation, destroying the entire array formation. There was no alarm at all. With a smile, the old servant walked up the steps and entered the courtyard. And at this time, the dead servant in the front courtyard had already been discovered. But when those people went up to investigate, they all fell to the ground, bleeding from their head and dying. The shopkeeper's eyes widened. He shouted, "Don't go over there. Stand back." After walking a safe distance away, he turned to look at the rear courtyard, a deep worry in his eyes. Creaked in the quiet night, the sound of the door opening was particularly grating to the ears. The old servant's eyebrows rose up, a bit of surprise on his face. He looked up. Chin Yu stepped out, his eyes calm. "A Chi family member." The old servant shook his head, his voice unpleasant to the ears. "No, I am just a dog that follows the young master." Chin Yu waved his hand. "Forget it. I wasn't curious about your identity to begin with. If you want to kill me, then do it." The old servant cackled. "Youngsters these days are truly amazing. But since you cooperated well enough and didn't try to ask for help, I will give you a quick death." Countless black threads appeared out of thin air. They were like a giant spider web that had already quietly sealed off the entire courtyard. As the old servant lifted a hand, these black threads rapidly grew, approaching Chin Yu. This gloomy and decaying aura was a curse. Chin Yu's eyes flashed. But before he could ask anything, Mimi's excited cheers echoed out from his soul space. "Chin Yu, I discovered that following by your side was the best decision I ever made. You are simply a divine tool that automatically hunts for food. I want this curse, I want it, I want it." Black lines immediately covered his forehead. "Little girl, what do you mean by, I want it, I want it?" Whenever you brought up this topic, it felt extremely dirty. "Divine artifact. Divine artifact my ass." The purple moon suddenly brightened. A deep purple light covered his soul space, but it left a small area for Mimi. This was a tacit understanding between the two sides. The little girl was flustered. "Curse, what do you want it for? Be careful that you don't get a stomach ache. If you defecate in Chin Yu's soul space, he definitely won't be willing. I can eat it, I don't need you to share it with me. Big sister, you should go to sleep." "Alright, but I want more than half." "I want half, I absolutely cannot be less." It was clear that Mimi was being pushed back again and again. But these words seemed to reveal an important piece of information. Purple Moon's gender was Big Sister. How did he know this? Moreover, it seemed that there was a great deal of communication between the two sides. Chin Yu's heart suddenly filled with sorrow. This was because he discovered that although he was the master of Purple Moon, she was cold and aloof and hadn't spoken a single word to him at all. He couldn't think about this. Tears welled up in his eyes. As his thoughts raced, the black threads had already arrived. They wrapped around Chin Yu's body, layer after layer, submerging him. The old servant revealed a look of surprise. After listening to Daoist Black-White's words, he originally thought that he would have to spend some effort. He always felt that something was wrong. But since he was entangled in his curse net, unless he was at the Calamity Immortal Realm, it would be impossible for him to escape this calamity. Was Yao Bin at the Calamity Immortal Realm? What a joke. So what was the reason? Did he need to know? Since Chin Yu wanted to die, he was happy to save time. But soon, the old servant couldn't be happy. This was because he discovered that Chin Yu still hadn't died. Moreover, the power of his curse was being consumed at an astonishing rate. In just a short period of time, he had lost 10% of it. 10% of the curse was enough to poison half of Heavenly Demon City to death, but he still hadn't died. This boy was truly strange. Did he have some sort of treasure that could absorb curse power? But if he thought he could rely on this to preserve his life, he was far too naive. Chapter 521. Chin Yu couldn't remember when he had become the nemesis of all dark and gloomy powers. Whether it was poisons or curses, he didn't reject them. The more the better. Each and every one of them had a fiendish appearance. They were simply food carts with red flags on them, blowing their horns and giving their all for the guests in their soul space. This sort of spirit was worthy of praise. Unfortunately, these food carts of love were destined to be one-off. It was a small regret that they couldn't be encouraged to work harder and continue to work harder. Within the layers of black curse threads, Chin Yu's lips twitched. He felt a bit ashamed of his lack of compassion. Others were already pitiful enough, so how could he mercilessly mock them? Between people, the most basic emotions had to be taken into account. I can't laugh, I have to be solemn and dignified. But, it's really hard to endure. In particular, through the cosmic Seacross bell, Chin Yu could faintly feel the fluctuations of the old servant's thoughts not too far away. You have a lot of curse strength. I'm only afraid you don't have enough. 20%. 30%. 40%. The calm and composed old servant suddenly revealed a dignified expression. With so much curse strength, even a peak blue sea would be able to kill several of them, yet this boy hadn't died yet. No, something must have gone wrong. A trace of unease gushed out from the old servant's heart. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead, as if something bad was about to happen. Perhaps he should be more cautious and investigate the situation before doing anything. The old servant's thoughts stirred. He wanted to take back the curse strength, but in the next moment his complexion changed. This was because he discovered to his amazement that the curse that wrapped around Chin Yu's body seemed to grow onto him. He simply couldn't take it back. No, not only could he not take it back, but he couldn't break it. It was like a pair of terrifying shackles that connected the two of them together. The old servant took a deep breath. His incomparably old face seemed to stir up a whirlwind. All the wrinkles twisted and twisted, making him look fierce and terrifying. Open! With a loud shout, the black threads began to burn. Within the black and gray flames, they were burnt to ashes. The old servant's back instantly bent, as if he had consumed too much strength. He didn't even look at Chin Yu, who was wrapped up in the black and gray flames. He turned and left. His body sank into the darkness, fusing into it and vanishing from sight. The older one was in Jianghu, the more timid they became. This saying was absolutely reasonable. This old servant had lived to this day and had killed countless people in his life. What scene had he not seen? However, it was precisely because he had seen so much that he understood what it meant to fail miserably in an easy task. He had seen it with his own eyes many times. The Qi clan was very powerful, and they had many ways to kill Yao Bin. There was no need for them to take the risk. Even if they were to retreat in defeat today, they could always find another opportunity in the future. He was old and his spirit was not good, but he never lacked patience. Therefore, the old servant walked neatly without any hesitation. In the courtyard, the ash-black flames gradually extinguished, revealing Chin Yu's calm face. His eyes flashed with a bit of surprise. Shadow step. It turned out that he was not the only one who knew how to do this. Although Undying was still in a deep slumber state, he had clearly recovered a great deal. This was because he could now use the supernatural ability he gifted Chin Yu. So, after a moment of surprise, Chin Yu said in a soft voice, "The guests haven't eaten their fill yet, so how can I let you leave?" He stepped into the light and shadows, his body blending into it. Outside the Dawn Perch Inn, under a large tree, the street lamp illuminated the mottled shadows of the tree. Somewhere in the shadows of the branches, there was a sudden movement. The old servant walked out, his face pale. He turned his head and looked at the quiet Dawn Perch Inn. His face darkened. For so many years, as long as he took action, he would always succeed. He never imagined that today he would be pecked in the eye. This boy was too strange. He had to tell the young master as soon as possible so that he could be more careful and not be careless. However, with the young master's personality, the more outstanding this Yao Bin's performance was, the heavier his killing intent would be. He would definitely think of a way to keep Yao Bin in Heavenly Demon City. The old servant's eyes blurred, revealing a bit of infatuation. The young master's personality was just so likable. He coughed several times and was about to leave when his complexion changed. He whipped his head around. The shadows of the trees parted like water. Qin Yu smiled and said, "Since you've come, why go back? Life in this world is filled with hardships. Let me help you free yourself from them." The old servant cried out, "That's impossible. You actually know the shadow transformation art." Qin Yu shook his head. "I call it shadow step. I don't know what shadow transformation art is, but that isn't important. Let's continue." The old servant turned and ran away. Seeing the old servant disappear into the shadows, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. He followed. In a corner, two people appeared one after another. Then in an alley, in a loft, Qin Yu's lips curved up. Indeed, the so-called shadow transformation art was extremely taxing on the soul. After using it again and again, the old servant's aura weakened a great deal. That was about enough. Then, it was time to end this. If he played around too much, he would end up ruining himself. Shwa, shadow transformation art appeared once more. The old servant was panting for breath. His originally pale face was now devoid of blood. He raised his head and glanced at the distant brightly lit and majestic mansion. Joy flashed in his dim eyes. If he used the shadow transformation art once more, he would be able to smoothly enter the Qi family. At that time, he would be safe and the young master would naturally protect him. The old servant smiled. He took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the feeling of his soul turning into nothingness. Then, he stepped forwards. His body began to transform, fusing with the shadows beneath his feet. Just as he was about to finish, a hand reached out from the shadows. Qin Yu calmly said, "Just what are you thinking of doing?" The old servant was shocked. He didn't care about exposing himself. Just as he was about to cry out for help, he froze. His weak soul could no longer resist the suppression of the cosmic sea-cross bell. Faint traces of purple moonlight shined into his soul space. At this time, the purple moon also attacked. This was quite strange. It seemed that the cursed strength within the old servant's body was to its liking. Bang! A terrifying strength erupted from Qin Yu's body. The old servant's body tensed and the cursed strength in his body surged out like a broken dam. If this sort of feeling had to be described, it would be like someone smashing open your skull, taking out a tube, and forcefully sucking it in. Just thinking about that feeling made one's hair stand on end. In fact, the pain the old servant was withstanding right now was absolutely far more terrifying than this. This was because the cursed strength in his body had already fused together with him. Every inch of his flesh and blood, every inch of his bones, every inch of his organs, was twitching. Indeed, if one walked by the river, sooner or later their shoes would be wet. In this life, he had killed far too many people and his retribution had finally arrived. The old servant knew a long time ago that ever since he stepped onto the cursed path, he was doomed to die a miserable death. But, he didn't regret this, because this was what his young master needed. For his young master, he was willing to do anything, even if his young master never knew what he was thinking. But, was this important? The old servant used up the last of his strength to straighten his curled back. He looked up at the Qi family's residence not too far away and let out a light breath. His pupils began to slacken, his life had been far too tiring. It was time for him to take a good rest. After several breaths of time, Chinyu loosened his hand, allowing the thin corpse to fall to the ground. He glanced at the Qi family and then stepped into the shadows. Ancestral Temple. Qi Dongtai, who was sitting in the high chair with his eyes closed in meditation, suddenly opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of black blood. The fourth branch head was frightened. He said in panic, "Father, what is wrong?" Qi Dongtai had a blank look in his eyes. After several breaths of time, he suddenly stood up and walked outside. A moment later, the main doors of the Qi family opened. Qi Dongtai silently walked out, heading straight towards the willow tree not too far away. A corpse was quietly lying beneath the willow tree. Its body was bent over, as if it had suffered a great deal of pain before dying. Even so, its face was calm and peaceful. The fourth branch head's pupils shrank, revealing a look of fear and alarm. This was because the one who had died beneath the willow tree was his father's old servant. How could this sinister and terrifying old dog quietly die like this? They were shocked, speechless. But, deep in their hearts, they couldn't help but feel a bit more relaxed. Of course, the sorrow on their faces didn't lessen in the least because of this. This old dog had followed his father since he was a child and was the person he trusted the most in his life. In his heart, his status was likely even higher than that of his sons. Qi Dongtai took a deep breath. He squatted down and slowly reached out a hand, closing the old servant's eyes that were staring at the Qi family's residence. When the eyes left his face, the steady palm actually began to gently tremble. The third branch head fell to his knees. "Father, the dead cannot come back to life. Please restrain your grief and don't harm your body." Qi Dongtai spun around and sent him flying with a slap. "Father." The third branch head's face was swollen and purple. His eyes were filled with innocence. Qi Dongtai harshly said, "Shut up. If it weren't for the little beast you gave birth to, Xia Yan wouldn't have died today. If you weren't my son, I would have killed you right now." No one had the time to gloat. Everyone was silent out of fear. They looked at the old ancestor who was like a volcano, their faces filled with panic. The old ancestor cultivated his mind and soul and hadn't lost his temper for many years. Even when Qi Yunshu died, he was still able to maintain his calm. It could be imagined just how bad his mood was right now. No longer paying attention to the people kneeling on the ground, Qi Dongtai picked up the dead old servant from the ground. He suddenly discovered that the old servant was as light as a feather, without any pressure at all. A sour feeling surged in his heart. He looked up and forcefully suppressed these emotions. Then, he turned and walked towards the Qi family residence, whispering to himself. "Xia Yan, we have been friends for a lifetime. I naturally know what you are thinking in your heart, but I cannot accept it. Thus, I pretended that I didn't know. In truth, I wanted to tell you a long time ago that there was no need for you to live so hard. But I was greedy and didn't want you to leave the Qi family. I hoped that you could help me strengthen the Qi family. You stayed in the Qi family your entire life, but when you finally died, you died outside the walls of my Qi family. I find this hard to bear. But don't worry, I know who killed you. I guarantee you that he will leave with you. Of course, I am well aware that the person who killed you isn't easy to deal with, so I will quietly wait for a chance. I ask that you be more patient. What I promised you, I will definitely accomplish it." Climbing up the stairs, Qi Dongtai looked up at the main entrance. "How many years has it been since you entered or left from the main entrance? You said that this was the right of the master and that as a servant, you had to abide by your duties. You told everyone that you were a dog at my side, but I always regarded you as my brother. Today, this young master will bring you home from the main entrance." Chapter 522. Someone from the Chi family had died. This couldn't be hidden from the eyes of those with a clear mind. When it was determined that the one who died was the old servant beside the Chi family old ancestor, countless people widened their eyes in shock and panic. Then, with the fastest speed possible, they withdrew all the people they sent to investigate. The old servant had always declared himself to be a dog, but in truth he had an extremely high status in the Chi family. Sometimes he could even issue orders on behalf of the Chi family old ancestor. When the heads of the Chi family's fourth branch met him, they had to greet him like a nephew, not daring to show the slightest disrespect. If such an important character died in the night, would the Chi family old ancestor give up? Moreover, if Chi Yunshu was added in, the Chi family had already lost 2 lives to Yao Bin's hands. As for why it was Yao Bin, this question didn't need an answer and there was no need for evidence. Everyone was afraid that they would be implicated by the Chi family's crazy revenge, so they couldn't wait to retract their feelers. But what surprised them was that the Chi family was abnormally quiet. They actually didn't respond to this matter at all. But this time, no one went to mock the Chi family. This was because the old servant's death had already demonstrated their tough stance. Even if one became a disciple of the demonic path, they would still make them pay with their lives. Their current silence couldn't be because they had given up. The greatest possibility was that they were waiting for a chance. This matter wouldn't be easily forgotten. City Lord Mansion. The Lord Demon Envoy played with a ball of light in his hands. Light and shadow flickered within. It was the complete process of how Chi Yunshu and the old servant had been killed. Xia Yan's curse power is quite strange. He was actually able to ignore it. No, to be more accurate, he plundered all of the curse power in Xia Yan's body. He whispered to himself and then revealed a smile. This brat Yao Bin is even more mysterious than I imagined. This was for the best. He feared that Tai Bin was too weak and wished that he was even fiercer than he was. The more cards he had in his hands, the less likely it was to die. This was because the road he wanted to walk was far too dangerous. His 5 fingers closed and the ball of light was annihilated. The Lord Demon Envoy calmed down and looked outside. Yan Lu walked in with light steps. She was like a honey peach, each and every movement of hers filled with charm and charm. Lord Demon Envoy seems to be quite leisurely today. I'm surprised that you aren't cultivating. Ripples of light flowed in her beautiful eyes, as if she was silently saying something, causing one to be unable to help but be mesmerized. The Demon Envoy had a calm expression. Why have you come? She rolled her eyes at him. Fortunately, she had come to understand his thoughts over the years. If he was unwilling to talk about it, there was no need for her to pester him about it. Yan Lu placed her hands on the long table and lowered her waist. Her chest became more and more shocking. She said softly, I came to remind you, Lord Demon Envoy. It seems that many people are interested in the kid you've been paying attention to. The Demon Envoy was expressionless. So what? Yan Lu blinked. When a mature woman made such a childish gesture, it was especially alluring. Are you really not worried at all? Although that brat has some cultivation and his methods are ruthless enough, the ones paying attention to him are all big tigers. If you're not careful, you'll die. The Demon Envoy lightly said, if he dies, then he dies. What does it have to do with me? He looked up, his eyes sharp. I don't like being tested by others. You are no different. Yan Lu humphed. After saying that she didn't want to say anything, she turned and walked away, leaving behind a graceful and charming woman. The Demon Envoy furrowed his eyebrows. As expected, she had sensed something. But he had brought Yan Lu with him because he had no other choice. Otherwise, if he were to go out alone, he would definitely be sensed by someone's divine sense. Luckily, Yen Lu wouldn't ruin his plans and she wouldn't randomly say anything. Otherwise, that would truly be troublesome. Thinking about the situation Yao Bin was facing right now, the demon envoy frowned. Perhaps he should think of a way to find a protective talisman for him. Although it might not be able to scare away all the wolves, it would at least give him a layer of protection, or, at the very least, in a dangerous moment, it would give him a chance to intervene and protect his position. Otherwise, once others discovered his true thoughts, Yao Bin would undoubtedly die. In a dark study, the doors and windows were tightly shut. A dim yellow oil lamp emitted a weak light that was swallowed up by the darkness, leaving one feeling particularly depressed. A figure was sitting behind a round table. His back was facing the door, as if he were savoring the charm hidden in the darkness. Elder, our probing failed. That trash Qi Yunshu was killed on the spot. The Qi family retaliated, but unfortunately, the curse master they sent also died not too far away from the Qi family's residence without leaving behind any useful information. The black-clothed man fell to his knees. This subordinate was incompetent. Elder, please punish me. As he spoke, his voice was clearly distorted, dry and without any emotion. I already know what happened, so I don't blame you for this. I underestimated Yao Bin's reaction. I never thought he would dare to counterattack in such a strong manner. He paused for a moment before continuing, but we didn't come away empty-handed. The black-clothed man revealed a puzzled look. Elder, please explain. The figure seemed to smile. Qi Yunshu died and Xia Yan also died. The Qi family has already formed a mortal enmity with Yao Bin. As long as there is hatred, there will be a motive to attack. We must find a way to obtain this motive so that we can openly deal with Yao Bin in the future. However, there are many people interested in him right now. We have already attacked once, so there is no need to be in such a hurry to attack again. Let the others rush ahead. Remember, sometimes when you watch from the sidelines, you can discover many things that you can't. The black-clothed man said, this subordinate understands. It is just that if we delay for too long, don't worry, it is impossible to refine and absorb the demon blood crystal in a short period of time. Taking a step back, even if Yao Bin really manages to do it, I still have a way to make him spit it out with interest. The black-clothed man didn't say anything else. After bowing, he stood up and left. The figure turned around. Because of the dim light, it was extremely blurry. It didn't seem to be the face of a person, but rather a fierce demon mask. Yao Bin, the lost demon blood crystal, is it on you or not? I'm really looking forward to it. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Everything was calm and tranquil. The mess in Dawn Perchin had already been cleaned up. Stepping on the light of dawn, a cultivator quickly arrived. He flew straight to Qin Yu's residence and respectfully said, Lord Yao Bin, I have come on orders. I ask that you follow me to the city lord mansion. The courtyard doors opened from within. A slightly cramped Duan San had changed into the gray robes of a servant. He cupped his hands together and bowed, please wait a moment. My master will be here soon. The messenger cultivator was startled and then revealed a look of envy. Being a servant wasn't a glorious matter, but one had to look at who they were following. A servant of a demonic path disciple could also be considered a member of the demonic path and could follow them into a small world. Just the heaven-defying cultivation environment alone was enough for countless cultivators to flock to. Thus, every time the demon ascension gate opened, there would be countless demonic path cultivators. Some of them came from extraordinary backgrounds and would take the initiative to apply to become a servant of a new disciple. Besides having a bit of good looks, this boy's aura was ordinary. Yet, he had actually been chosen. He really had some dog's hit luck. Chapter 523. Following behind Duan San, out of the courtyard was his sister, Duan Jieyu. She was really like a Jieyu flower, a delicate and beautiful girl. She wasn't tall, but every part of her body was proportionally balanced. Because she was weak and sickly all year round, her skin was pale, and one could see the tiny light blue blood vessels beneath her skin. Now that she was wearing the same color-made dress as Duan San, it didn't hide her beauty at all. Instead, it made one want to protect her from the bottom of their hearts. When the reporting cultivator saw Duan Jieyu, he was stunned for a moment. Looking at the similarities between the two of them, a look of understanding appeared on his face. He seemed to have found the reason why Duan San, was chosen. So when Qin Yu arrived, he could clearly sense something strange in this person's eyes. Of course, when Qin Yu seriously looked at him, he found that this person had already changed into an extremely respectful appearance. Gossiping and whatnot, of course it was okay, but if one didn't know when to stop, that would be asking for trouble. Lord Yao Bin, the transmission array has been prepared. You and the other disciples will enter the demonic path's small world in batches today. Please follow me to the City Lord Mansion as soon as possible to avoid affecting the transmission arrangements. Qin Yu nodded. Let's go. The current shopkeeper of Dawn Perch Restaurant was still the old man who loved money. He stood at the place where the front yard and backyard connected, watching Duan San, and Duan Jieyu walk over. His eyes were slightly excited. However, the two sides didn't communicate, otherwise it would only bring more trouble to this old man who was about to leave. Duan San swore in his heart that if he was successful in the future, he would find a way to repay this uncle of his. Sitting in the flying carriage arranged by the city lord's mansion, Duan San and Duan Jieyu slowly calmed down. But looking at the luxurious decorations inside the carriage, they couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable. Qin Yu saw this but didn't say anything. There were some things that couldn't be solved with words alone. They would just have to get used to it in the future. He smoothly arrived at the city lord's mansion. Today, when he looked at the majestic mansion again, although it was still as majestic as before, it was no longer as terrifying and oppressive as before. It seemed that because of the changes at the Demon Ascension Gate, the demonic path supreme elders that had gathered here had already left. Qin Yu's heart relaxed. This was absolutely a good thing for him, because at the very least, no one had managed to obtain any evidence against him. As for suspicions, as the last person to leave the ancient tree monster, even if everyone knew that he didn't have the strength to complete the hunt, he still couldn't completely wash away all suspicions. But now, Qin Yu was a member of the demonic path, and his performance was outstanding. Many people knew of his existence. Even if there were people who harbored ill intentions, they wouldn't dare to make things difficult for him without evidence. However, in the future, he would have to be more careful and try not to give others anything to use against him. Inside the city lord's mansion, one of the palaces had disappeared without a trace. In its place was a massive formation that was incredibly complex and took up an area of several acres. A group of expressionless demonic path array masters were seizing this time to make final adjustments and experiments. Right now, the one who stayed behind to manage the teleportation was the master of Heavenly Demon City, a thin purple-robed old man. Although his appearance wasn't anything to look at, for him to be able to control the Heavenly Demon City of the demonic path for over 1,000 years, his strength couldn't be underestimated. Even if he restrained his aura, it still left one's chest feeling heavy. After Qin Yu arrived, he verified his identity and smoothly received his transmission number. The fourth batch. Because the demonic path had decided to absorb all the surviving cultivators from the small worlds, there were nearly 2,000 new disciples. This was the highest number of disciples the demonic path had ever recruited in history. In addition, there were some demonic path disciples that brought servants with them like Qin Yu, making the number even more astonishing. Even though the transmission array was temporarily strengthened, the entire transmission process had to be divided into 5 batches. The first batch of disciples enter the transmission array. With a loud shout, the crowd began to clamor. Several hundred new demonic path disciples flew out with excited expressions. In order to leave the Demon Ascension Gate's small world alive, the demonic path disciples had to have good luck. But besides luck, everything else wasn't certain. Strictly speaking, out of the nearly 2,000 new disciples, there weren't many that truly met the requirements to become a demonic path disciple. This was because when the sage controlled the ancient tree monster avatar and hunted them down, the ones he chose were relatively outstanding demonic path cultivators. For many people today, being able to become a demonic path disciple was a completely pleasant surprise. Because of this, besides setting the highest number in history, the quality of the disciples was also the lowest in history. It was known as the worst batch since the founding of the demonic path. The massive array formation on the ground lit up. Boundless strength erupted, instantly distorting space. The radiant divine light made it hard for one to look at it directly. Bang! A straight beam of light smashed into the skies, breaking apart the vault of heaven and forming a rainbow-colored vortex. A moment later, the humming sound subsided and the light slowly faded away. The distorted space was restored to normal. The first transmission array formation ended. Many cultivators revealed excited expressions. They thought that this was truly worthy of being the demonic path. Even though it was only a single transmission array formation, it still created such a majestic momentum. And most importantly, after today, they would officially become members of the demonic path. After an hour of adjustment, the second transmission array formation began. As if they had gained experience, they paused for a moment and then began the third transmission array formation. The fourth batch of disciples enter the transmission array. Qin Yu turned and ordered, "Follow me." Duan San and Duan Jieyu nodded. The two of them had never seen such a grand scene before. They were already nervous beyond belief. Luckily, Qin Yu took care of them. He didn't advance too quickly and the two of them followed closely behind. Because of this, when they arrived at the transmission array formation, it was already filled with cultivators. Qin Yu handed over the transmission number and smoothly entered the array formation. But Duan San and Duan Jieyu were stopped. "This batch has already been filled. Wait for the next batch." Qin Yu turned and said, "They are my servants. Since that's the case, I will go with them." The array master had no expression. "You have already entered the transmission array. If you leave now it will affect the safety of the array formation. Do not delay." He lifted a hand, prepared to be transmitted. Qin Yu frowned. Duan San hurriedly said, "Master, you can go first. This is the City Lord Mansion, no one will make things difficult for us here." The array formation began to shine with light. Qin Yu took a deep breath. "Be careful. I will be waiting for you." Bang! A beam of light shot into the skies, crashing into the vault of heaven. His field of vision instantly darkened. When it recovered, Qin Yu discovered that he was in a sea of stars. Beneath his feet was a giant jade disc carved with countless runes. It slowly rotated, carrying everyone through the sea of stars. Everyone's eyes widened. As they looked at the scene before them, their faces were filled with awe. Qin Yu's complexion didn't change, but his heart shook. This was because he discovered that the sea of stars in front of him wasn't an illusion. In other words, they had borrowed the power of the array formation to tear open the world barrier and arrive at the outer realm. Could it be that the small world of the demonic path's holy land was actually outside this world? Suddenly, the runes on the surface of the jade disc beneath their feet began to shine. A barrier of light appeared, covering everyone within. In the next moment, a meteor with a long flaming tail howled into everyone's line of sight. Everyone cried out in alarm. Their hearts leapt into their throats. Luckily, they didn't collide with each other. The two sides passed each other several miles apart. Even so, the terrifying strength carried with it still caused the jade disc to violently tremble. Everyone found it hard to steady themselves and their faces paled. An hour later, a point of light appeared. It was like a lighthouse, guiding the jade disc forward. Suddenly, as if it had crashed into an invisible stream of water, the jade disc clearly became sluggish and began to slowly squeeze out of this area. In the next moment, everything opened up in front of everyone. A brand new world appeared in front of them, and in the skies hung 9 great suns. Chapter 524. 9 great suns shined brilliantly, but they didn't dazzle the eyes at all. There wasn't any burning heat, only endless warmth. Bathing in the sunlight, one felt as if they were soaking in a hot spring. Their entire body was warm and faint traces of heat constantly fused into their bodies. Qin Yu silently felt the warm energy spread through his body, his heart shaking. This strange energy could actually simultaneously nourish the mortal body, magic power, and soul. Although the amount was small and the degree of improvement was almost imperceptible, if it were accumulated over time, the increase would be considerable. Moreover, the entire Holy Land's small world was filled with rich heaven and earth spiritual strength that nearly condensed into mist. With such a cultivation environment, it was no wonder that countless people were willing to become servants in order to join the demonic path. The demonic path's holy land forbids any noise. Everyone, follow the directions and enter the designated area. Once everyone has arrived, we will send you away. External Affairs Protector Axion frowned, a gloomy look in his eyes. The great figures had decided to recruit nearly 2,000 disciples, so they naturally had their own considerations. Protector Axion didn't dare to express any dissatisfaction, but the sudden increase in work had left him battered and exhausted for the past several days, so he naturally wasn't in a good mood. He had originally only prepared for 200 new disciples, but now it had increased by 10 times. Even if he had 3 heads and 6 arms, he still wouldn't have enough time in several days. Without any other choice, Protector Axion could only temporarily select a batch of houses that he had prepared as rewards for outstanding disciples in the last great examination. Because of this, he had received no small amount of complaints. If there were some outstanding characters in this batch of disciples, Protector Axion would feel a bit better. At the very least, he would be able to form a good relationship with them today. Perhaps they would be of great use in the future. But look, all you could see were crooked melons and cracked dates. It was simply a tragic sight. He really couldn't understand why the lords would accept such trash. This was simply dragging down the overall quality of the demonic path. In truth, this was also the attitude held by the vast majority of cultivators in the demonic path. Therefore, after the initial excitement, shock, and joy, the high-spirited newbies subconsciously shrank their necks when they were stared at by unfriendly gazes, and they obediently landed on the ground. The first 3 batches of people were all here, and the earliest batch had already waited for over 2 hours. From this, it could be seen that they didn't regard these new disciples as anything special at all. Qin Yu smiled inwardly. Indeed, bullying the weak and fearing the strong was a fine traditional virtue. Even in the demonic path, it was a widespread inheritance. He closed his eyes and meditated. What the eye doesn't see, the heart doesn't grieve. At the same time, he began to think about how he would act after entering the demonic path. The truth was that the main theme had already been set. If Qin Yu wanted to rise up as soon as possible and obtain enough authority to become a pivotal figure in the demonic path, he needed to display a sufficiently outstanding performance. Thus, he couldn't keep a low profile. It was just that with the appearance of the demon blood crystals, there were many people that were secretly harboring evil intentions. If he continued to maintain a high profile, then it was likely that someone would grab hold of him. This matter must be carefully considered. There weren't many good men and women in the demonic path. If the demon blood crystal was exposed, then Qin Yu was sure that he would immediately be dismembered and then cleanly divided up by others. It had to be known that the demon blood crystal was still within his body. Although it was constantly nourishing his mortal body, at this rate of absorption, it would take at least 8 to 10 years for it to become his own. What a delightful yet headache-inducing matter. As Qin Yu was lost in thought, he was awakened by a loud rumble. The last batch of cultivators had arrived. He looked up into the skies. Ripples rose up in space as a giant disk squeezed out from within. In the next moment, everyone on the disk revealed shocked expressions. The cultivators to the left and right couldn't help but reveal looks of pride, as if they had forgotten that not too long ago, they were also like bumpkins. But now, Qin Yu wasn't in the mood to show that he was experienced and knowledgeable. He swept his eyes around and soon found the siblings Duan San and Duan Jieyu. He frowned, revealing a cold intent. The fifth batch of cultivators flew off the disc. Duan San's figure shook and he nearly fell from the skies. Duan Jieyu quickly caught him, preventing him from suffering the tragic fate of falling to his death as soon as he entered the Holy Land. Even so, he still caused everyone to roar with laughter. Protector Xian's eyes twitched. Although this person was only wearing the clothes of a servant, the servants of a dignified demonic path Holy Land were all top figures. Yet, such a shameful thing had actually mixed in. Humph. With a cold snort, Protector Xian ordered his assistant to take care of the following matters. Then, he turned and left. If he continued to watch, he feared that his blood pressure would rise and his blood vessels would explode. Duan San's face flushed red with shame. Master, I've lost face for you. Duan Jieyu tried to defend herself. Big brother, it was clearly someone who deliberately injured you. Duan San shouted out, shut up. He could guess that the reason he was being targeted was because of Qin Yu. But now, his master had just entered the demonic path, so it wasn't appropriate for him to cause unnecessary trouble. However, some people clearly didn't want to see them leave like this. A new disciple walked over and coldly said, Junior apprentice brother Yao Bin, right? Your servant is too insolent to think that he would dare to offend me. Today, I only had one of my subordinates give him a small punishment. I hope that you will discipline him well. Next time, it won't be so simple. He spoke with an aggressive and arrogant attitude. Behind him, a tall and bald fellow with a fierce face grinned, revealing a mouthful of white teeth as if he didn't care at all. His words instantly attracted everyone's attention. After a moment of surprise, they immediately revealed looks of excitement. No matter what the reason was, it was fine as long as there was some fun to watch. Moreover, after entering the demonic path, as cultivators of the same generation, they were destined to compete with each other. If the two of them had a conflict because of this, they might be severely punished. Wouldn't that mean they could eliminate two competitors ahead of time? Brother Yao Bin, do something. They've already come knocking on our door, so how can we endure this? Erupt with your little universe and punch that guy's face to pieces. I'm optimistic about you. Duan San hurriedly said, Master, it's just a small injury. There is no need to worry about it. Duan Jieyu bit her lips, her eyes full of anger. How was this a small injury? If it weren't for her big brother's quick reactions, he would have already been sent flying out of the transmission disc. That would have killed him. Qin Yu keenly discovered a flash of urgency in this Gong Yu's eyes. He really was doing this on purpose. After the Qi family, was there someone else who couldn't restrain themselves and wanted to attack him? Today's plan wasn't too clever, but these youths were proud and arrogant. If they were angered and a battle broke out on the first day, no matter what the reason was, they likely wouldn't end well. This person in front of him must have obtained some sort of promise so he wouldn't worry if something happened. If he was caught, the results wouldn't be good. His thoughts raced. After figuring everything out, Qin Yu's complexion returned to tranquility. His eyes were deep and faint. Senior apprentice Brother Gong, right? I have no idea whose dog you are today, but I'm sorry, but I will have to disappoint you today, because I won't come into conflict with you. But I will remember you. In the future, there will be opportunities for fellow apprentices to get closer. What does Senior Apprentice Brother Gong think? Gong Zhen's complexion stiffened and anger flashed in his eyes. He clenched his teeth, preparing to forcefully attack and force Qin Yu to break the rules together with him. But he saw Qin Yu turn and walk towards a demonic path cultivator. After a long time, he finally gave up. Senior Apprentice Brother, if I had attacked just now, what would have been the result? The demonic path cultivator revealed a strange look. He hesitated for a moment and said, if a new disciple breaks the rules, the punishment is always heavy. If you had attacked, the best result would have been 50 strokes of the paddle and you would have to stay in the dungeon for some time. Qin Yu cupped his hands together. Thank you for telling me, Senior Apprentice Brother. The person chuckled several times. There is no need to thank me. You should think about just who you have offended, otherwise it will be hard for you to have peace in the future. This person had good intentions. Qin Yu nodded and remembered his appearance. This person had been sent here to greet a group of mediocre new disciples. It seemed that this person hadn't been doing too well in the demonic path. If there was a chance in the future, Qin Yu didn't mind helping him out. Zhang Xian was very curious. How could a new boy be targeted by someone? Although he had warned him, he didn't believe that this calm boy would have a good ending. To dare to secretly plot against him on the first day, the person behind the scenes must be quite capable. Even if he could avoid it once or twice, could he avoid it every time? It was only a matter of time before he met with misfortune. But this sort of situation wasn't rare in the demonic path. He had only said a few words of advice on a whim and didn't place it in his heart. If Zhang Xian knew that the boy across from him was thinking of supporting him in the future, he wouldn't know whether to laugh or cry. All right, everyone follow me. We are going to your residences. Protector Xian's assistant gloomily said. He smacked his lips and couldn't help but curse, what a bunch of lucky bastards. Because these residences had important uses, whether it was their location or the scale of construction, they were all very good. Many senior disciples found it difficult to obtain one, but now they had been given to these poor people. The assistant felt extremely unbalanced. They sped along the way, passing through mountains and rivers and across plains. The vastness of the demonic path's holy land was revealed to everyone. There were over 2,000 people here, attracting everyone's attention. After they learned that these were new disciples, the demonic path cultivators all revealed mocking expressions. So it was this bunch of good-for-nothings that had walked into Dog's Hit Luck. As they looked around, their lips curled up even more. They really were trash that had turned into dregs. An hour later, the group finally arrived at their destination. In front of them was a towering mountain. The mountain was tall and straight, exuding a cold and arrogant aura. The assistant was the first to land. He glanced around with a bit of reluctance in his eyes. This place should have been his own residence. He couldn't think about it. It hurt his heart. As new disciples, you will be placed here. Starting from the foot of the mountain, the heaven and earth spiritual strength will gradually increase and the size of the residences will also increase. In order to be fair, the distribution of residences will be based on your cultivation. You will have to rely on your own ability. The assistant flicked his sleeves and a pure white crystal fell to the ground. Strike this stone with all your strength and it will release red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and purple lights. The difficulty of the 7 colors will gradually increase. Let's begin according to the transmission order. The first new disciple to attack took a long time to gather his strength. With a loud shout, he punched out. The pure white crystal emitted a faint hum and a dark red color flashed across its surface. The assistant's lips twitched. He waved his hand, the last one, stand at the back. The person turned and drew back in shame. Then came the second person. His performance was slightly better. Although he was also red, the color was much richer. He stood in front of the first person. Red, 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 it was no wonder that he was looked down upon. It had to be known that even a Holy Land servant with a bit of strength could strike this testing stone. Ordinary disciples were at least orange, and it was normal for them to be yellow. But these people. Chapter 525. Before Qin Yu made his move, the one with the best performance was blue. Although his color was a bit dim, for better or worse he was still a 5th grade disciple. This result was considered quite good even amongst the veteran demonic path disciples. Without accident, he would surely have some achievements in the future. The assistant revealed a smile. He whispered some words and agreed that once he settled down, everyone would come out to eat a meal and be intimate with each other. This scene caused everyone's eyes to heat up. But this was the cold and cruel reality. Those without strength would never obtain respect. Duan Jieyu looked at the newly promoted disciple who was trying his best to maintain his composure but couldn't hide it no matter what. She gently pursed her lips. She knew that this person was fierce and belonged to a master that she couldn't come into contact with before. But there was one thing she was sure of, and that was that her master was stronger than him. That night at Dawn Perch Inn, she and her big brother had hidden in a room and witnessed the entire process of the old servant's appearance and escape. Although it seemed as if her master hadn't done anything at all, her big brother had told her that this was true fierceness. Duan Jieyu thought about it and agreed. To stand there without moving and then finally scare away the enemy, what could be called fierceness if that wasn't fierceness? What's more, she later heard the news that someone in the Qi family had died that night. It was someone extraordinary. From that day onwards, the shopkeeper uncle's attitude towards her master became even more respectful. What would her master do today? Duan Jieyu blinked her eyes, a bit of anticipation growing in her heart. Of course, part of the reason for this anticipation was to tell these people not to think of bullying her and her big brother anymore. They were following a very fierce master. In fact, Qin Yu's performance didn't disappoint Miss Duan. When it was his turn, he calmly stepped forward. His steps were steady and unhurried. The assistant glanced at him and then lowered his head. He picked at his nails, his expression listless. Early Blue Sea is still far from being called a revered. He's another trash that stepped on dog shit to enter our demonic path. TSK, in the past, in order to enter the demonic path, just how much suffering did we have to endure and how much effort did we put in? You might be putting on an act now, but what use is that? Whether you're a mule or a horse, we'll find out soon enough. Hum. This sort of trash, even if he was lucky enough to enter the demonic path, he was still doomed to be at the bottom. If he failed the decennial examination 3 times in a row, he would still be kicked out. While he was lost in his thoughts, he suddenly heard a buzzing sound, and the ground beneath his feet began to tremble slightly. The assistant's thoughts were in a mess. He was startled when he heard the commotion. Before he could regain his composure, he looked up and saw the demonic path disciple who was maintaining order next to him. This person is called Zhang Xian. He has a calm temperament and he does things with a sense of propriety. It's just that his luck isn't too good. He made a mistake in his early years and wasn't taken seriously. Originally, he was thinking of finding an opportunity to promote him to a steward of the External Affairs Department. Although he was just an assistant protector, he still had the qualifications to be a small leader. But what happened today? Although his status wasn't high, for better or worse he was still an old man of the demonic path. For him to reveal such an idiotic expression in front of a group of newcomers was simply shameful. The assistant decided in his heart that Zhang Xian could not be used. He had no shrewdness at all and would definitely fly into a rage when something happened. There was no value in grooming him. The assistant sentenced him to death in his heart. He turned his head and looked at Zhang Xian with some curiosity. Just what was happening? Then, his mouth opened a little at a time. The exaggerated angle made one secretly sigh with emotion. He was truly worthy of being a demonic path disciple. His muscles and bones were amazingly flexible. Just look at his mouth, it was so big that it could almost fit an ox inside. Unfortunately, no one had the time to look at the assistant's disgraceful appearance. This was because everyone at the foot of the mountain felt as if they had been struck in the head with a stick. Their heads buzzed and they lost the ability to think. At the foot of the mountain, the testing stone that had been placed on the ground was still constantly trembling. It was because of its trembling that the ground began to shake. The rich purple color was like a blossoming flower, wantonly unfolding in the air. That kind of purity was dazzling and dazzling. The assistant's entire mind was immersed in it. He didn't know how long he swayed before he finally regained his composure. Then, his lips began to tremble. Deep purple, this was absolutely deep purple. Moreover, Qin Yu's fist had caused the testing stone to tremble. This proved that the strength of his fist had surpassed the limit that the testing stone could withstand. Although the testing stone for new disciples was only the introductory version, the highest strength it could withstand was still at the peak blue sea level. Thinking of this, the assistant's scalp tingled. If he didn't see this with his own eyes, he would never have believed it. Peak blue sea, this boy actually had peak blue sea strength. The assistant closed his mouth with great effort. He was so excited that his entire body shivered. At this time, he felt as if he were standing at the turning point of his destiny. Whether he would be mediocre or rich in his next life, it would all depend on this person in front of him. What nonsense! To have peak blue sea strength in the entrance test, even looking at the demonic path, this sort of character was extremely rare. To say that he had a bright future was already underestimating him. His future was simply limitless. Perhaps one day in the future, he would become an influential figure of the demonic path. If he could be on good terms with him while he was still humble, was there even a need to think about how much of an investment he would receive? This was a lucky chance bestowed by the heavens, a lucky chance bestowed by the heavens. The assistant was extremely excited. He hurriedly took out the list of new disciples. He had to remember this boy's identity first. As soon as he said his name and hinted that he already knew he was extraordinary, the distance between the two of them was instantly pulled closer. As for this Zhang Xian, his luck was truly good. He had seen the entire conversation between the two of them when Qin Yu questioned them. At that time, Qin Yu hadn't revealed his strength yet, so this could be considered an early investment. He would definitely leave behind a good impression. Comrade Zhang Xian was worth cultivating. Perhaps one day, he would suddenly have a reversal of fortune. As for Comrade Zhang Xian, he was still confused. He looked at Qin Yu in front of him and then at the trembling purple testing stone, his face filled with confusion. Duan Jieyu clenched her fists. Her pale face flushed with excitement, like a bright red apple, extremely alluring. Master was indeed the fiercest, and he was even fiercer than she had imagined. Purple, this was the highest level of purple. She proudly swept her eyes over the shocked and dazed figures around her. She couldn't help but look up, revealing her snow-white neck. We are servants personally chosen by Master. In the future, there won't be anyone that dares to bully Big Brother. Gongzhen stiffened. The bald servant behind her had a fierce and ferocious expression on his face. His eyes were filled with fear. Before they acted, they had also inquired about some information. But they weren't clear. They only knew that this surname Yao was somewhat strong. But if one could become a demonic path disciple, no matter how weak they were, they still had some skill. Gongzhen didn't care about this at all. But now, who could tell her why he had peak blue sea strength? Peak blue sea, that was a peak that many people would never be able to reach in their lives. If he could take another step forward and become a calamity immortal, Gongzhen's face was drained of blood. Fear gushed out from the depths of her heart, drowning her. Countless eyes fell on Qin Yu, revealing a deep awe. The assistant had finally found Qin Yu's identity information. He swept out with his divine sense and remembered everything. He revealed the brightest smile on his face and was about to step forwards when a sneer sounded out from the crowd. So what if he's a peak blue sea? How could someone over 100 years old, or even older, compare to us? 100 years old, the assistant paused. Another new disciple said, "This is fellow Taoist Yao Bin from the Black Demon sect. According to what I know, fellow Taoist Yao joined Midway and had a profound blue sea cultivation in the past. And he has stayed in the Black Demon sect for over 80 years. This person's information was even more accurate." Everyone's spirits rose. If he was a blue sea 80 years ago, then how old was he now? A conservative estimate would be 200 years old or even more. What else is there to say? He's just an old fellow. When we reach his age, we might not be any worse than him. Moreover, a blue sea that was over 100 years old had limited potential. If he made another breakthrough in the future, it was unlikely he would step into the calamity immortal realm. The assistant looked over. As he saw Qin Yu's calm expression and that he didn't refute him, he was secretly disappointed. But he still squeezed out a smile. Fellow Taoist Yao Bin's cultivation has blasted out a deep purple color. There is no doubt that he will be the champion. Fellow Taoist can choose any courtyard on this mountain. His tone was friendly, but compared to the excitement from before, it was as different as the heavens and earth. If one didn't reach the calamity immortal realm, then in the demonic path, they would never be able to reach the highest heavens. Peak blue sea, the demonic path had accumulated over tens of millions of years. There was truly a great number of them. Every year, there would be a peak blue sea cultivator that neared the end of their lifespan and couldn't make a breakthrough. They would die in their cave dwellings with hatred in their hearts. A lifetime of bitter cultivation, tens of thousands of years of struggle, all turned into bubbles. Of course, a peak blue sea was still an absolute powerhouse. Even in the entire land of divinity and demons, they could be considered an overlord. It was just that in the demonic path, the halo of such a powerhouse was greatly weakened. Qin Yu had a calm expression. He had replaced Yao Bin's identity, so he naturally couldn't refute these facts. But he believed that the true high-level figures of the demonic path would definitely know the truth. For instance, the two at Dawn Perching. His performance today was enough, and it would soon reach the upper echelons, attracting more attention for himself. And now, this kind of attention could become a protective barrier around one's body, causing those with ill intentions to feel fear in their hearts. As for what the people in front of him thought, what they thought, was that important? To be honest, Qin Yu didn't care at all. Therefore, he withdrew his hand and calmly walked to the side. Humph. When the tiger is away from the mountain, the monkey is king. In this generation of disciples, there are several proud sons of heaven. For instance, the Zhao family's scion, Zhao Qianyuan. He is a peak peerless proud son of heaven. The Dong family's Dong Hanzhu is also a rare character, and there is also the Western tomb's highest Dutian, whose Tao arts are unparalleled under the heavens. As for Zhou Fenghuang and Mu Qinghuan, those two proud daughters of heaven are also outstanding existences that illuminate the highest heavens. These true proud sons of heaven have already been chosen by the elders to be their disciples. They entered the Holy Land ahead of time to cultivate and aren't together with us. Gongzhen sneered again and again. Otherwise, how could our limelight have been stolen by an old fellow today? Since he had already offended them, there was no longer any fear. These words resonated with everyone. Many people nodded inwardly, looking at Qin Yu with a bit more ridicule in their eyes. So what if he was a peak blue sea? They were all disciples of the demonic path, so how could he dare to attack them? Moreover, it was unknown who was stronger and who was weaker in the future. As long as he didn't reach the calamity immortal realm, there was no need to fear him. Duan Jieyu's chest heaved up and down. She was so angry that her lips turned white. Why did these bastards always target my master? But, was what they said true? Did her master really not have any potential left? Duan San her let out a deep breath. He patted her shoulder and smiled. Our lives were saved by master, so why do we need to think so much about it? We just need to remember that no matter what happens, we are all master's servants. It is enough that we work for master loyally. Duan Jieyu quietly explained, I know that big brother is just not worth it for master. He is a good person. It was no wonder that when her big brother was injured, her master chose to endure it. So he had his own difficulties. Chapter 526. Qin Yu's complexion didn't change at all because of Gongzhen's words. Just like how a mountain wouldn't care about a weed that had taken root beneath its feet. But when his eyes inadvertently fell onto Duan Jieyu, he saw her sad, angry, and depressed expression. His eyes flashed. In particular, there was even a trace of pity in her eyes. Qin Yu was left speechless for a second. Even someone as high profile as him was pitiful today. How could this be? Of course, this wasn't anger, but a feeling of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He turned to look at Gongzhen and his eyes turned cold. When I don't want to talk to you, I can ignore you, and when I'm impatient I can slap you. Of course, I won't do that, but slapping you with words is the same. Gongzhen sneered. What, am I wrong? Qin Yu lightly said, how many of these people do senior apprentice brother Gong know? He shook his head. Saying you know is too much of a compliment. How many have you seen? Gongzhen's face flushed red, as if he had been ruthlessly humiliated. He clenched his teeth and said, all the proud sons of heaven of the demonic path are like divine dragons. I have never seen any of them before. He looked up, a taunting look in his eyes. Could fellow Taoist you know of them? He was clearly returning these words to Qin Yu, but he didn't expect Qin Yu to seriously nod. That's right, I know them. Gongzhen was startled for a moment. Then, he mercilessly laughed out loud. When it comes to bragging, I truly admire you. Fellow Taoist Yao, do not forget that all the proud sons of heaven of the demonic path will hear of today's events sooner or later. At that time, your faces will be ugly. Qin Yu suddenly said, after watching for so long, it's about time you came out. Strictly speaking, you were the one who sold me out, so you should feel some guilt in your heart. These words were abrupt, leaving everyone stunned. They didn't understand what he meant, but soon their eyes widened, as if their eyeballs would pop out of their sockets. Zhao Qianyuan stepped forwards. His hands were empty and he didn't carry his symbolic dragon spear. But his calm and unruffled aura made it so that no one dared to underestimate him. Moreover, he was wearing a dark red robe with a golden collar. This was proof of his status as the demonic path's demon son. The assistant ran forwards beneath everyone's shocked eyes and bowed. "I greet Scion Zhao." His words stunned everyone. Their eyes were in a trance, as if they were facing a legend. Scion Zhao, in the demonic path, besides that person, there shouldn't be anyone who dared to call himself that. In other words, he really was Zhao Qinyuan. Zhao Qinyuan walked in front of Qinyu and looked him up and down several times. He faintly smiled and said, "I'm fine. It looks like there's nothing wrong with you." "That's a relief." After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands together and bowed. "What happened that day was indeed my fault. I ask Brother Yao for forgiveness." Qinyu's eyebrows rose up. "Successor, why are you being so polite?" Zhao Qinyuan stood up. "I've discovered that Brother Yao's breadth of mind seems to be limited. I don't want this matter to cause trouble for me in the future." He turned around and said seriously, "I can testify that Yao Bin really knows those people you just mentioned." He then added, "He knows all of them." Qinyu had a calm expression. "I just arrived today so I didn't prepare anything. I won't keep you as a guest, but if you come some other day, I'll treat you to a drink." Zhao Qinyuan readily agreed. "Dong Hanzhu is also here. He can't forget about you. Next time I'll bring him along." Qinyu nodded. "All right." Without staying for too long, Zhao Qinyuan left. But his appearance had already suppressed everyone so much that they couldn't breathe. Those mocking gazes turned to awe once more. This was Zhao Qinyuan. If he could personally come here to testify and speak as equals, could he be an ordinary person? Gong Zhen's complexion paled. Her face darkened, not saying a single word. Qinyu walked over to Duan Jieyu's side. He looked at the smiling girl and lightly said, "Some people fart like thunder and their tongues are like cannons. It's fine to listen to them, but do you really want to lower yourself to their level? If you're really impatient, then one day you can make a move and the world will be peaceful again." I don't remember too clearly. Where did I hear this phrase from? If you can make a move, then don't make a fuss. Although it sounds a bit pretentious, sometimes it really does make sense. Duan Jieyu nodded, a bright smile blooming on her face. The girl hesitated for a moment. Then, her voice was as quiet as a mosquito. "Master, can you help me ask His Highness the successor for an autograph?" Qinyu was stunned. He thought that when he was in the limelight and slapped the other side into a pig's head, was it really appropriate for her to speak like this? Humph, this was indeed the thoughts of a young girl. Chasing after stars wasn't a good idea, otherwise one would suffer a great loss. The following test wasn't surprising at all. With Qinyu taking action, everyone was suppressed to the point of being overshadowed. The assistant smiled. Fellow Daoist Yao Bin, the residence at the summit was specially decorated when it was built. Not only is it the most luxurious, but the cultivation environment is also better. He didn't fear others mocking and flattering him. To be able to stand on equal footing with Scion Zhao, so what if he was over 100 years old? Qinyu nodded. All right, then this one. Since he decided to keep a high profile, this residence was naturally suitable for him. Perhaps some people still disapproved of this, but no one dared to continue expressing it. Even Gong Zhen had a gloomy expression, not saying a single word. Qinyu had just said that if there came a day when he was impatient, then he could make a move and calm the world. Wasn't this the same as saying that he wanted to deal with him? Although he constantly told himself that he was someone with a backer, Xiao Gong still couldn't help but feel flustered. The residence at the summit was truly luxurious. There were large palaces here, and even several hundred people could live here. The entire residence was situated high up in the clouds. After entering, Qin Yu discovered what the assistant was talking about. 9 shining mirrors floated in the skies, corresponding to the 9 suns in the skies. They gathered more light and sprinkled it down. That mysterious energy that could nourish the soul, mortal body, and magic power was actually several times richer than in the outside world. It wasn't easy to manage such a large residence. Luckily, the assistant knew how to manage things. Soon, 10 men and 10 women were sent over to take care of all the miscellaneous chores in the courtyard. These servants were originally dissatisfied with being transferred here to serve a new disciple. But when they entered the courtyard and sensed the surrounding environment, they were stunned for a moment before revealing looks of ecstasy. They knelt to the ground and bowed to Qin Yu. This sort of cultivation environment was considered outstanding even in the demonic path's holy land. Only protectors, demon sons, and elders could enjoy such a cultivation environment. They were only inferior slaves and didn't have the qualifications to serve Qin Yu. But they never imagined that they would be so lucky today. Qin Yu nodded and received them, not saying much. He had the assistant smile and told them that if they needed anything in the future, they could ask him. Duan San and Duan Jieyu were a bit nervous. This was because of the 20 new slaves. There were many more outstanding people than them, whether it was in terms of cultivation or beauty. Luckily, Qin Yu's arrangements allowed them to feel more at ease. From now on, those 2 will be the leaders. Just listen to their orders. You may leave. Like this, the first day after entering the demonic path's holy land passed. Zhao Qianyuan had promised to come as a guest in the future, but he never imagined that he would come the next day. Dong Hanju also came with him. After learning the identities of the 2 people in front of them, the slaves who had been wondering just who their master was were suddenly shaken and filled with excitement. The competition within the demonic path was fierce and it was important to follow their master. Perhaps in the future they would have a chance to leap over the dragon gate. Looking at it now, their new master was obviously an extremely thick thigh. They quickly and respectfully welcomed the 2 people in. Then, someone ran off to report. When Qin Yu received Duan San's report, surprise flashed in his eyes and he immediately stood up. Zhao Qianyuan calmly smiled. I spoke to him yesterday and he insisted on coming today. I didn't think there was anything else so I agreed. This could be considered an explanation. Dong Hanju was straightforward. I want to know just how strong you are. Qin Yu waved his hand. There will be a chance in the future. I don't want to fight right now. Dong Hanju frowned. He was interrupted by Zhao Qianyuan. Right now, Brother Yao isn't in a good position to fight with you. Dong Hanju thought for a moment and slowly nodded. His bright eyes became tranquil once more. He swept his eyes over Qin Yu's residence, a bit dispirited. This fellow, so he came here to fight. Qin Yu looked at Zhao Qianyuan. There seemed to be a deeper meaning to his words just now. He ordered Duan San to prepare a banquet and then led the 2 into the main hall. As Qin Yu's assistant heard that Zhao Qianyuan and Dong Hanju had come to pay a visit, he immediately sent a message to Protector Axayan. Protector Axayan had been worrying about how he had missed the chance to befriend Zhao Qianyuan yesterday and express his goodwill to Qin Yu. He was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly ordered people to prepare a superior banquet and then chose a jar of wine from his collection to personally deliver it. The assistant stopped him. Protector, Yao Bin and the other 2 are clearly old acquaintances. Since they have reunited today, they will naturally reminisce about old times. If you rush over now, I fear you won't be welcomed. He looked at Protector Axayan's complexion. Protector Axayan, you only need to pass on some goodwill today. There will be plenty of chances to get closer in the future. Protector Axion nodded. You're right. He thought of something else. There seemed to be someone in the sect who wanted to deal with Yao Bin. He investigated a bit but didn't find anything. It could be seen that the one who did this was absolutely of a higher rank than him. In this sort of situation, expressing a bit of goodwill and waiting for the situation to become clearer was indeed the best choice. After thanking Protector Axion, Qin Yu opened the jar of wine and poured wine for the two. He raised his cup and said, "Thank you for coming today." He was well aware that with Xiao Qianyuan and Dong Hanzhu here today, no one would dare to casually look down on him in the future. Yesterday, Xiao Qianyuan had appeared and even apologized in front of everyone. This was also because he wanted to support Qin Yu. Qin Yu was well aware of this and remembered it in his heart. Xiao Qianyuan raised his cup. In the Demon Ascension Gate small world, there were some misunderstandings between us. Now that things have passed, how about we write them off? Dong Hanzhu solemnly nodded. He knew that they were speaking of the time when they had worked together to have him bear the monster race's bloodline curse. Qin Yu smiled and said, "Let's not mention the past." The weak had no status. This was a particularly cruel point in the demonic path. In that situation, Qin Yu had taken the initiative to deliver himself to their doorstep. His strength wasn't bad, so he was certainly the best choice. Since there were no irreconcilable contradictions between them, turning hostility into friendship in the current situation was the wisest choice. If this sort of person really wanted to take revenge for the smallest grievance, then even if they were happy for a moment, they wouldn't be able to go far. In this world, having one more friend was always better than one more enemy. Moreover, Xiao Qianyuan and Dong Hanzhu were both peak-proud children of heaven. In the future, they were destined to become great figures of the demonic path. Xiao Qianyuan smiled. The corners of Dong Hanzhu's lips also relaxed a bit. In truth, everyone's thoughts were similar. Xiao Qianyuan drained his cup and placed it down. He said, "All new demonic path disciples will undergo an extremely important test." He paused for a moment, a solemn look in his eyes. "Does Brother Yao know what this test is for?" A bolt of lightning flashed through Qin Yu's mind. Demon body. Xiao Qianyuan nodded. "That's right, it is the demon body. Before this, I stopped Brother Dong from fighting with you because of this. Brother Yao, you must take this test seriously and enter it in your best condition. Trust me, this is extremely important." Dong Hanzhu said, "The demon body is the most important part of the demonic path's cultivation methods. Soon, the great supernatural powers of the demonic path can only be displayed with the demon body. Moreover, the most important point is that the seat of the Holy Palace is currently vacant. As long as the demon body enters the highest saint rank, they can directly take over and become the master of the Holy Palace." His eyes blazed with heat. Although the master of the Holy Palace is only a nominal leader, he has the authority to control the entire demonic path. Between the heavens and earth, he is a supreme existence. It isn't just you and me. In theory, all demonic path disciples have this chance. Qin Yu's heart skipped a beat. This was the first time he had learned of the great secret hidden within the demon body. It was no wonder that Yu Qi had brought him back to the land of divinity and demons because he had cultivated the demon body. The banquet didn't continue for too long. After sending off Xiao Qianyuan and Dong Hanzhu, Qin Yu suddenly took a deep breath, a sharp light flashing in his eyes. Could he try for the position of master of the demonic path? As soon as this thought appeared, it wildly swelled. If he succeeded, you're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.